So, all right, we're on. It's working. The thing is going.
Awesome.
I have no way of knowing how many. Oh, it says 0 viewers. Okay, so great. So if anything goes wrong, it'll totally be now.
No one will know.
Let me actually go to the YouTube page and make sure that it's streaming publicly. Because I think I have it set to private for now, just so we can work out whatever kinks we might need to work out. Where'd it go? So it's private again. Yep. All right. I'm just working it. All right. Live streaming. Hurry up thing. Events. I'll cut this off the end. I think I'll go back and edit it so that none of this is on here. But here we go. Making the stream public on YouTube right now. All right. We have a first viewer.
Oh boy.
I'll do the nice. Oh, yeah, that's right. You were so smart to tweet a link to the thing. How brilliant of you.
Oh, yeah.
Climb it in now. I'll wait till there's a more robust coffer of viewers before we start introducing the whole shebang. And the draft doesn't start for 5 minutes anyway, so we're all right.
So that one viewer, you can just hang in there for the next.
Yeah, if you're one of the half dozen people here, hang out and make weird judgments about us based on the single room in our house that you can see. All right. So we're tweeting the FanGraphs link, right? Not the YouTube link or anything weird like that. So there's already, even now, like as we hit 0 hour, no one's sure exactly who's going 1-1, which is a whole lot of fun. Actually, it's not. It's horrifying. So I'm sure, yeah, I can't wait for my entire mock draft to crumble like a house of cards and be awful. But do you have how are you consuming the draft as we go? Do you have the TV on, or do you have a stream on, or how are you going about?
I don't get MLB Network, so I was going to open the stream on my computer. All right, so we're up to 32 people now. So literally dozens of people are watching this. I'm really glad I shaved. So welcome, everyone, to the 2017 FanGraphs MLB Draft live stream. It's a new thing that we're trying because technology allows it. So hopefully the goal during the stream is to provide supplementary commentary for the draft beyond what we've already done, and hopefully provide you with a unique multimedia experience that you can't get by listening to Harold Reynolds comp every other kid to a Hall of Fame player during the draft. So that's what we're going to do. And I'm joined by my co-host, Chris Mitchell. So I think I cut out for a second.
Oh, I did?
I don't know. I lost everything for a few seconds there, but I'm back.
Oh, that's strange. All right, well, we're working now, so
all right.
But I just introduced Chris Mitchell, the purveyor of the Cato projection system. And you can enjoy, my phone is exploding. Oh, it's Cameron making fun of me for wearing a tie. Yeah, I do have a tie on. This is a hand-me-down tie from my cousin Phil. He used to wear it. It has a question mark on it, which is appropriate given the state of the top of the draft right now.
but he used to wear it to play punk shows in the mid '90s at like Eastern Pennsylvania high schools. So this is what I've chosen to wear as my draft night attire.
I put very little thought into my draft night attire. I don't have a cool story like Eric does, but just put on the first shirt I grabbed.
Oh, there. Now we can see Chris.
Oh, you couldn't see me before?
No, I had it set to just see my dumb face.
Oh, okay.
But we fixed that. So as the draft gets ready to roll, let's look at what is going on in the chat queue, and we'll try to answer the chat questions verbally and in the chat queue itself, like you'd see a normal chat on the site, just so that we're covering all our bases and everyone can sort of and everyone can experience the chat. Like if you can't hear, it's good if you can still ask and receive answers. So some of the questions I'm seeing now are related to the final mock draft I posted, which you guys can go check out on the FanGraphs homepage. But some of the questions in the chat seem to be surrounding Griffin Canning, UCLA right-handed pitcher Griffin Canning, who there's another great article on the site today about some of the overusage of Griffin Canning, specifically Canning, certainly more notably than any of the other potential first-round arms, and how that might impact his stock. So I can tell you that before Saturday, when news of the medicals started to circulate and teams started to grow concerned, that he was in play already at pick 10. I think ultimately as you get to the back of the first round and you have to decide between Canning, Tristan Beck, who's also got clear starter projection but injury questions, and then a bunch of other college arms that are likely relievers, the Canning still buoys to the top of that group. So I think somewhere in the 20s probably at this point is where you might start to see him. But if things are a little more concerning based on what the team doctors are telling them, that it might be worse than that. If the medicals are bad, but he's been pitching well all year, it's kind of hard to freak out that much about it, right? Because he's been pitching pretty well all year. And even if you think at some point he's going to break, so are half the other pitchers in this draft. But I can tell you that, like, I saw Canning last year and this year, and I saw him throw like 140 pitches in a game last year, that they had won handily. I think they were up by 6 in the 9th, and they just ran him back out there because he was pitching his shutout. So it's not a good situation. But ultimately, I don't think it's a death blow to his stock. So that's what I'll say. So Chris, when you started working on the Cato stuff to sort of statistically project out how you think the class lined up, can you tell people what you're sort of generally looking at, what the system sort of prioritizes, and why some of the guys who you have at the top of the list are there?
Yeah, sure. So on the hitter side, it takes into account pretty much everything a player does at the plate, whether it's his walk rate, strikeout rate, hitting for power. Those are kind of the big things. And it also loops in what position he plays defensively. So with this class in particular, a lot of the guys are first basemen, and they would have been up towards the top of the list if they played kind of a more premium position, but instead they were dropped down a little bit. So on the hitting side, the biggest things to look at are how much power he's hit for, and that's not just home runs, but it's also doubles and triples and things like that, and also how much contact he's made by way of strikeout rate. And on the hitting side, my top guy is Adam Hazley, because he kind of does a little bit of everything, and he's one of the few guys who is a very good hitter and also has a semblance of defensive value and speed. Whereas a lot of the other guys are first basemen and don't quite project as well in that one area. Pitching side, the most important thing is strikeouts. If a pitcher is missing bats, that usually is predictive of what he'll do as a professional. Important too, as our home runs allowed. Pitcher height is another big one. On the pitching side, I have Brendan McKay, #1, by a pretty wide margin, and Griffin Canning and David Peterson come in right behind him.
So when you factored in, and if you can see the screen share right now, what you're looking at is the Cato board with Brendan McKay at the very, very top, Griffin Canning, who we just discussed, at number 2. And it's interesting that you mentioned pitcher height. Do you think that when you factor that in, did you factor pitcher height in as a factor of draft position, or is it factored in as performance? Because it feels to me like there are some teams who are prone to selecting, even not just necessarily in the draft, but like trading for and signing free agents who are a little bit smaller now. Like Oakland is a team who I think has exploited a little bit of a market inefficiency and bias against shorter pitchers. Is it factored in for draft position or for performance?
It's factored in basically the same way any other type of performance would be. So I kind of see it as another variable, just like strikeout rate or walk rate or things like that. And it's predictive not only for college guys, but also minor league guys. Given the same statistical track record, the taller pitcher is more likely to succeed in the majors than the shorter pitcher. And there's a whole bunch of reasons why that might be, but I think a lot of it is just projectability, and that if you're a taller guy, there's a better chance then that you'll add velocity than someone who's maybe 5'10", 5'11".
Some of the other questions that are going on in the chat. Someone wants to know how likely Oakland is to take UC Irvine second baseman Keston Hiura if he's there at 6, and they want to know how much they'd save under slot if they were to take Hiura there. And the amount of buzz that Hiura has started to generate in the top 10, anywhere from 5 all the way down to, again, at 6 with Oakland, 8 with Philly, 10 with Anaheim. I'm not sure how much money there is to be saved, because it's not as though his range – I mocked him down to 18 because there are a bunch of teams connected to him up top, but I just didn't, you have a fork in the road when you do these mock drafts. You just have to pick one path or the other. And when the actual draft occurs, as soon as the actual draft takes a different turn, your mock draft just totally collapses. So you're faced with this issue when you're putting them together. You have teams connected to players, and you have players that you aren't connected to teams, but you get to a point in a mock draft where that player is just too much value to pass on, and then you're forced to choose either between giving David Peterson or giving Keston Hiura or Alex Faedo to a team that you don't have them connected to just because you feel like they should be gone by now, or you can just ignore that, leave those players off of your mock, and connect the teams to the players that you've heard them connected to. And it's a little bit disingenuous, but your mock draft probably looks better when all is said and done, and you're looking at how many picks out of 30 you got. So Hiura has presented this issue to me during this process, and I do think Oakland is interested in him at 6. I think there's a chance he's off the board as early as 5. And because there are teams in that range that are interested in him, maybe there's not a whole lot of money to be saved, especially if Oakland is legitimately considering him at 6. Now, the fact that rumor has been put out there might be a product of his agency trying to squeeze a little bit more cash out of the Braves at 5, because they have less leverage with Hiura at 5 if there's a legitimate chance that he comes off the board at 6. Much less than if his next home is at 10 or 13 or whatever. And with all the talk of the underslot deals over the last, 16 hours or so has perplexed me a little bit, because the bonus amounts this year are more uniform. There's less money to be saved on the margin for instance, let's talk about the very top of the draft. At number 1, if Minnesota is considering Royce Lewis and Brendan McKay, and finances are a factor, and McKay's next home is at 4, and Royce Lewis's next home is at 3, it doesn't make sense that there's talk about Lewis cutting a huge underslot deal, because Lewis has more negotiating leverage than McKay does. So that's why the entire Lewis stuff has caught me off guard. But if anyone's going to do underslot deals this year, it has to be a huge cut. Like Nick Prado at 5 would be a huge cut because you're looking at a guy who's probably going to go in the mid-teens. That's the sort of actual financial savings that might let you move someone like with top 10, top 15 talent to your next pick in the 30s and 40s. So, Hura at 6. I've heard Oakland on college bats in general. Adam Hazley is like the one name specifically, not Hura. But yeah, I'm not sure how much money they could really save at 6. If I'm Oakland, I don't know. It's kind of hard to ignore some of the kids with tools on the board if you're Oakland, right? You don't have a chance to buy tools like Austin Beck has on the open market. If he starts hitting and becomes the sort of superstar that a guy with that sort of power and speed becomes, that's not a player that Oakland can afford typically. So I think there's some argument for that. So the Twins have been put on the clock. They got 3.5 minutes to turn their pick in. And we'll let's see what kind of questions we have going on here about the Twinkies and what they might do. There's some interesting questions for later in here already. You guys are submitting good questions. This is great. Which team won the draft and why was it the Padres? That's great. Excuse me. Let's see. People enjoy my cousin Phil's tie. All right, Twins. Okay, here's a good question. How much can minor league overall rankings change in one draft? How many spots could the Twins and Reds rise or the Cardinals fall? I didn't do off-season org rankings. I think that the right time to do them is after the trade deadline when there's no prospect movement for like an extended period of time. Because at that time, lining up the orgs anyway is already sort of an obscure, sort of nebulous thing to do because it depends what your priorities as an evaluator are. So I think it's good to do it at a time when the cement isn't totally dry on all the prospect evaluations. I think like the way to do it is the draft happens, July 2nd happens, the trade deadline happens, and then probably between July 2nd and the trade deadline, you try to get a feel for like the top tier, the top 10 guys in each farm system, and then just generalize the depth of each farm system. And then as soon as the trade deadline is done and those guys have sort of moved around again, now you can kind of line the farm systems up because I think you have the time to do it. But then like as far as individual prospect rankings go, that waits till the fall and the winter when like the players there's enough detail about the players to rank them. So in an individual draft, you're probably looking at the team with the best draft class adding like a 55 or better future value prospect, and then maybe another 45 or 2 if they can grab somebody or 2 in the 30s and 40s, like the Reds and Twins, those teams that have multiple picks might. And then there are the teams who grab like the high upside 40 future value guys who during the summer when they debut in pro ball show you something that moves them up. So like as far as farm system rankings in general go, like it's not a whole lot because we're talking about an individual prospect or 2. But I do think there can be some movement there. All right, the Twins pick is in. Michael Kadire is in the MLB draft green room. I don't know. It's always fun to see who announces like the second round picks and stuff because it's always someone like the casual fan does not appreciate. So like it is cool watching like guys like Jay Bell and Michael Kadire and stuff. All right, the commissioner is making the pick. I might be behind everyone else. Holy crap. All right, so the Twins have selected Royce Lewis.
Wow.
Let's talk about Royce Lewis, okay? Other than I'm not going to sit here and malign the death of my mock draft after the first pick. Let's talk about Royce Lewis, okay? So Royce Lewis is a shortstop at J. Sarah Catholic High School in Los Angeles. Their campus is unbelievable. I was at their high school to check out like the Scott Boras Classic tournament where they have like all the best Southern California high school teams. And it's unbelievable. Like their field, they had, I don't know, there are minor league parks that are far worse than this. So Lewis is interesting because he's not projected for me to stay at shortstop. He's a high-end athlete, but he doesn't have the actions or the arm strength for shortstop for me. I'm going to post some video of him in the chat right now so you guys can get a look while I'm talking. What this guy does do is he's a plus-plus runner. And so even if you don't like him at shortstop, you like him in center field. And you think that he's got the athleticism to convert to center field fairly easily, and I agree. He's got time to develop there. I think it exists purely in abstraction. But if you want to put a future 60 on his glove in center field just based on how fast and athletic he is, I'm totally fine with that. And then on top of that, he's got terrific feel to hit. He barreled tough pitching during area codes last summer more consistently than anybody else. He does it to all fields. And then the body's got some projection, so he's probably going to grow into some power. I don't think he's going to be an elite power guy. It would surprise me if he ever hit 20, 25-plus home runs. I think you're looking at 15, 18, maybe peaks out at 20 home runs with a plus bat. Huge value defensively and on the bases. I had him ranked, fifth in the entire class, but I think there's an argument for him to be anywhere at the 3, 4, or 5 spots. I think now it's time to wait and see how much money Minnesota saved with this pick and what it might allow them to do later in the draft. Do you have any thoughts on this? What do you know about Royce Lewis? Chris?
What do I know about Royce Lewis? I don't know a lot about Royce Lewis. I mostly focus on college guys, so
okay.
Basically whatever was in the schedule.
I didn't know if you'd done anything.
It's going around. No, I saw that MLB gave him a George Springer comp. Does that seem realistic to you, or is that just one of the ridiculous things that they always throw around?
No, that's not terrible. If people who are watching this don't know already, comps are just generally a thing that I have a distaste for because I just think I think there's a disingenuousness about it from a media perspective because I think it can be lazy when you should just be able to describe the player. I think that it's a clickbait thing. Just like if you grab an Entertainment Weekly or whatever and it says that like Bill Burr is the next Louis C.K. Like it's just here's that thing that you like and here's a new version of that thing. And, it makes you click an article. Springer, was a tooled up college player whose swing was a mess his junior year and was already in center field. So, no, I don't think there's a comp there. I don't think Lewis is going to hit for the kind of power I think Springer is going to hit for throughout the duration of his career. I think physically there are similarities, though. But, yeah, I think Royce Lewis is his own thing. And as it goes with most elite talents, like they're just their own thing. So yeah, Lewis is a very interesting player. I don't think this is a bad pick. It's just not the pick I would have made.
Looks like the pick is in for number 2. Any guesses?
I just got a text from a scouting director who's also wearing a tie. All right, so yeah, you said the Reds pick is in. They pick at 2, 32, and 38. So they were sort of a group that was in a position to maybe save some money. But I think Hunter Green's going to be the pick here. And I don't think you will. So there was a lot of talk about – first of all, let me say this, and I'll probably say this a few times during the course of this stream. The draft as a thing is horrible. It's horrible. And so, like, there's been talk about Green preferring to go elsewhere other than Cincinnati, and I feel bad that he doesn't get to pick where he works.
Yeah.
But they did just select him. And I think the Reds organization, the people I know with the Reds, it's a good organization. It's a great farm system. And I think that I think the kid's going to be very successful. And I've just been around him. I haven't talked to him a whole lot. But I've been around him a lot over the last 2 years, even when he was a junior. And he's got the mental makeup to handle the pressure that comes with being the 17-year-old on the cover of Sports Illustrated. I know that feels weird to talk about, but he's ready for this. And I think he's going to be really, really good. So now the pick 3 here with the Padres on the clock. Oh, wait, let's talk about Hunter Green a little bit more, because we're talking about maybe not a generational talent, but a generational athlete on the mound, I think. So let me go grab some video to post in the chat of Hunter. I first saw Hunter Green last spring when I went to go scout Lake Rutherford, and I just got lucky enough that the day I went to see Rutherford against Notre Dame, that Green was pitching. And Green struck him out on 3 pitches in his first at-bat, and then Rutherford took him deep in the second at-bat. Because Green he located a couple backdoor sliders in that first at bat and then pumped 98 right past a frozen Rutherford in that third at bat, or on the third pitch, and he just got a little too aggressive with his fastball in the second at bat. But when I saw him the rest of that summer, and then I went to see him this spring, and it's just the body, the delivery, the athleticism, the way he repeats, it's all exceptional. And there's video now linked in the chat if you guys want to look at Hunter Green swing and throw and run while I talk about him here. And so what there isn't right now is a breaking ball, a consistent breaking ball. I've seen it flash above average, and I think it'll get there eventually. But he's throwing a curveball and a slider right now. There's a different release point for both pretty clearly. And scouts I've talked to think that one is sort of cannibalizing the other. They think eventually the slider will bubble to the surface there. But everything else, you want to project on it, fine. The command, you want to project plus command. Pardon me. Do you want to project plus command because of how athletic he is? Sure. You can do it. You want to do it with a changeup too? Sure, you can do it. There's that kind of arm acceleration there. So he, I think, is the highest quote-unquote ceiling in this draft because scouting maxims allow you to dream on him to that degree. But I had him evaluated evenly with Kyle Wright from Vanderbilt at the top of my draft board, and ultimately just had Wright number 1 because that breaking ball is already in place. So, Green's talking on camera right now, which he's going to do a whole lot of for the next couple of years, even before he sees a big league mound. And I just hope that kid stays healthy. He's a very special talent. All right, so top 2 picks are off the board. Padres are on the clock at 3. I think I have Mackenzie Gore mocked here. I feel pretty good about that, especially with Royce Lewis off the board now. I think Gore is the clear selection. Preller has seen Kyle Wright at least once. I was in the building the first time. I don't know if he had been back in to see him late in the year when Wright's stuff started to tick back up. The day I was in there to see him when Preller he was up to 96 early, and then the velocity sort of ticked way down to the low 90s late in the start, but it was February, and it was strangely cold for San Diego. So what do you think about Kyle Wright as a possibility here at 3?
I think it could happen. Cato, I think is a fan of him. He was one of the top pitchers, I think. Where do I have him over here? Looks like I have him as the 7th or 8th pitcher on my list. Okay. His 2017 numbers, they weren't exceptional. at least as exceptional as some of the other college pitchers in this class, but he has a pretty good track record of he pitched well last year as a sophomore, and he pitched well his freshman year out of the bullpen. So he's a guy who will rack up lots of strikeouts. He keeps his walks in check. He also allows very few homers. Also has that 6'4" frame, which is another point in his favor for Cato. So he seems to be someone who a lot of teams were into at the top of the draft. So I think it's a possibility.
This is going to be the interesting thing now, I think, for the rest of this top 10 is ultimately where Wright goes. I do think Mackenzie Gore will go here at 3. And then McKay at 4 seems like a foregone conclusion. I've heard that that's his floor, and I heard that Tampa likes him as a hitter. And so then Atlanta has the decision to make it 5 of whether or not they like Wright or if they're going to do some underslot nonsense. Man, it's the Lewis thing at 1 is like.
What do you think happens with McKay now? Where does McKay fall to?
I think McKay is 4. I think McKay is 4 to Tampa. I think that's his floor.
Okay.
And I think he gets drafted there as a hitter. But I think Gore here at 3 is the guy. I know that Gore has had an in-home visit from like someone very high in the Padres organization. Like they wouldn't be wasting their time if they weren't serious about picking you, sort of thing. All right, so the Padres pick is in. Network is going to commercial. Let's see if we've got any Padres questions here. Okay. How bummed are the Padres if they miss out on Green and pick Gore or Lewis instead? I think this is from J. Jonah Jameson, who I think works at a local newspaper. I don't think they're that bummed, partially because I think they've had several weeks to reconcile it. I do think that like Green just checks all the boxes for the Padres' MO. He's got the body, the arm strength. It's everything. It's everything that organization, the scouting department, holds dear. But they love Gore. I love Gore. I haven't talked to anyone who doesn't think Gore is great. And what's interesting is if you go back to last summer after the summer showcase stuff, I wrote up all the high schoolers at the time. After area codes and after like the Under Armour stuff, you see all the big kids, and obviously like some of them slip through the cracks like Austin Beck did. But it's just interesting to look back at how I had those guys lined up, and Gore was way, way lower than he is now because he's the sort of player that grows on you over multiple innings, over multiple starts. And he gets showcased well because the guys who get showcased well are the guys who throw really freaking hard and have a good breaking ball, because when you come in for an inning at a time, that's what you do. You throw hard, you spin a couple breaking balls, scouts see ya, and that's it. Your day is done. And no one really cares if you threw strikes. You don't get to show how you sequence the second or third time through the order. You sure don't get to show how good your changeup is very often because you might throw 2 of them if it's your best secondary pitch. Your catcher might not even think to call for it because how many high school pitchers with good changeups has that high school catcher ever caught before? He's calling the pitches. So Gore is a guy who's like a high-end athlete with low 90s velocity and 3 potential plus secondary. He's like curveball, the slider, the changeup. They all might get there or be better than that. And it's just not a thing that I saw over, I don't know, I might have seen 50 pitches from him last summer. So it's just one of the flaws of evaluating like that. They're showing the Padres War Room now on MLB Network. There's an elderly gentleman with a red blazer who I believe, I didn't get a good look at him, but I bet it's Don Welke. So, all right, the commissioner's going to announce his pick. Let's all listen in as – oh, no, never mind. I thought they were going to shoot it to the commissioner, but no, they got Royce Lewis on the phone. Good for Royce Lewis. What other Padres questions do we have? Let's see. Oh, here's an interesting question as we get into the middle of the top 10. Which team do you think will probably make the biggest reach? This question's from Matt. Geez, that's a good question. I think that the Braves might do it at 5, but they have there's a plan there. So it's hard to call that a reach when there's clearly a coherent thought process going on about why they do it. The Trevor Rodgers is the guy who I think there will be the biggest delta between where he goes in this draft and where he is on my board. Trevor Rodgers is a left-handed high school pitcher from Carlsbad, New Mexico, who, if area scouts were on this guy, it was a huge pain in the ass for them to get in to see him because of where he's located. All the area scouts who have New Mexican coverage, they're the Four Corners area scouts. So these people have had to go Carlsbad, New Mexico. They've had to fly to El Paso and then drive 3 hours to Carlsbad a lot of times. And I know some area scouts who have put – the one guy told me he's 17,000 miles on his car because of where all the good players in the area are located this year. And Rodgers, I'm just not sure the breaking ball is there. And he's very old. He's going to be 20 later this year. Old for the high school class. All right. Commissioner Manfred has announced the pick. Mackenzie Gore is the pick at 3. We've already talked a whole lot about him. But let's go through it again. And I'm going to post a video on the chat so you guys can see the unique leg kick that's sort of in the delivery. It wasn't a thing, I don't think, that turned people off. Last summer, it's just a unique thing that you have to talk yourself. You have to have a therapeutic discussion with yourself about why it's okay. Because his leg and his hand and glove together go up in unison as if they're connected with a string. And it's like he's got sort of an Orlando Hernandez leg kick, and the arms also go up at the same time. It's really bizarre, but it works for him. And I think it's hard for hitters to deal with the timing of the whole thing at first, which I think helps him out. But again, it's like 90-92 with Gore on the fastball. He's been up to 96 this spring. Preller saw his best start where he was touching 95 plus several times. It's a plus changeup at least. There's some people who've got a future 7 on the changeup. It's already missing bats. Typically, high school changeups don't. You're just doing high school hitters a favor by throwing them a changeup because they can't typically catch 90, 92 if you've got it. And then, the slider and the curveball, probably both average to above right now. Chance they get to plus and might play above that because of how consistently he locates them. Breaking ball location is a huge, huge deal. So I think he's number 3 on my board. I think the Padres got themselves a really good player. I'm very excited to see him pitch in the AZL, especially because I was bummed this morning when I found out that Adrian Morejon was not going to be on the AZL, one of the 2 Padres AZL rosters. So it'll be a lot of fun to watch Mackenzie Gore carve up AZL hitters for 4 or 5 plus innings once he really gets going down here. And I hope that there's not such an innings limit on him that he can. And now I still think we can kind of relax here because I think that McKay is the guy here at 4. And then the draft really starts at 5. And that's where we're going to have to be on our toes. How much time we have left with with Tampa? Tampa's got a minute and a half yet on the clock. So let's look at some questions here about what Tampa's got going on. Okay. You putting McKay at 4 to Tampa. Are they the team more likely to be open to the whole two-way thing? I think that's an interesting question. I think how do you have McKay on your board at the very top of Cato as a hitter, a pitcher, or both, or
as a pitcher?
How did he stack up? Okay. Do you know how he stacked up as a hitter?
Yes, he does not stack up very well as a hitter. He was, I think, at number 190 overall, something like that.
Okay.
His hitting numbers, they were fine, but they were nothing all that special. And, of course, he's a first baseman, so that's kind of a knock against him as well. So
Right.
he hit very well in college, but it's not like you couldn't find other guys out there who have done similar stuff. But as a pitcher, though, he's off the charts. His numbers were great pretty much from the get-go, freshman year, sophomore year, junior year. So kind of for that reason, Cato sees him as a pitcher and not really as a hitter. But I guess you could make the argument that – oh, are we going?
Oh, are they making the pick already?
Oh, I guess not. I thought it was. But I guess you can argue that his hitting projection isn't necessarily fair just because he hasn't really been focusing on it that much. And he may have more room to grow as a hitter than your typical first baseman with good numbers in college. But still, the gap is so large that I think, at least by the numbers I'm looking at, it makes most sense to trot him out as a pitcher.
Yeah, like I said, I think I mentioned before on the stream, I think I've heard that Tampa likes him as a hitter.
Interesting.
The pick is in.
With the fourth selection in the 2017 MLB draft, the Tampa Bay Rays selected Brendan McKay.
There it is.
Okay, I was just waiting for Manfred to say something other than first baseman, and he just said all he said was they took Brendan McKay,
Right.
first baseman, and then he took a long, dramatic cut, which is why I waited. Okay, so I saw McKay pitch and hit at the ACC tournament 2 weeks ago. I still had him turned in as a pitcher, even though that the day I saw him, he was kind of underwhelming. And I totally see why anyone would be interested in him as a hitter. I get it. I really, really do. It's easy plus raw. He's basically told area scouts that it's like a hobby for him, that it's just this thing he does that they let him do when he's not pitching. So if you want to project, think about what he might be able to do if he's just focusing on hitting full time, I totally get it. The power is so easy. His extension through contact it's like you see this big, thick, kind of boxy frame, but his extension through contact is so beautiful and easy. And yeah, like I get it. I do, but I just think there's like next to no margin for error for this. If he doesn't hit enough, that's it. It's over. He's not a prospect anymore. And I know that it's easier to move a guy back to the mound than it is the other way. But you're looking at a guy. This isn't like some pitcher with like a plus 95 plus mile an hour howitzer. It's a pitchability lefty who was 88 to 91 a lot of this year. And yeah, there's a plus curveball in there sometimes, and 5 or 60 on the changeup. But it's like he's a fastball command guy and a curveball command guy. Not someone who, if this whole hitting thing doesn't work out, you can just put him on the mound and move him quickly like as a reliever who throws 95 plus with a hammer curveball. That's not who this guy is. So I think this is a risky thing. I totally understand why Tampa's doing it. I'm very intrigued by McKay as a hitter. But it's a ballsy thing. So I've got the video up on the chat if people want to see. I'm going to fast forward. I'm going to backtrack to, McKay does not seem happy. People are talking about it in our chat. Did he not seem happy? Were you watching the stream?
Yeah, he did not seem happy. I don't think he smiled once. He just looks he looks miserable.
Does he really? Oh, no.
Even now in the interview, he's just, I don't know what he's saying, but he doesn't look like a happy camper right now.
All right.
So I don't know.
I like Tampa as an organization. I'd be thrilled to be there.
Yeah.
He's an even-keeled kid a lot of the time. He'll get fired up at the end of innings when he finishes, guys off, or if he gets a double play to get out of an inning. So if there wasn't some sort of overly joyous reaction to him going 1-1, it wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah,
I do hope he's cool with going to Tampa.
Almost looks like he wants to cry right now. I don't know. I'm just basically his expressions, but looking at his
opening a beverage.
There you go. It looks like looking at his stat line, he struck out about 14% of the time this year, that's not a lot by normal standards, but when you're looking at guys who are supposed to be the best players in college, that's kind of a lot, especially coming from a first baseman where there's so little margin for error offensively. Also, when you have other first basemen out there like Pavin Smith, who I think struck out maybe 10 times all year or something ridiculous like that. Just kind of compared to the other first basemen out there, his numbers just they're not spectacular. They're good, but not great. So I don't know. I guess we'll see what happens, how the Rays choose to go with this and see how he does with more development. But the analytics aren't necessarily behind Brendan McKay as a first baseman.
All right, the Braves just took Kyle Wright, so there it goes.
There we go. All right.
The mock draft is saved. I just flipped McKay and Lewis. That's all it was. Not a big deal at all. All right. So Kyle Wright goes number 5 to Atlanta. He's the number 1 player on my board. And I'll bring up my draft board here between picks before we get Oakland's pick. He's 6'4". He's built like Michael Kopech in that, like, I'm jealous. Like, when I've seen Michael Kopech walk around in like a tight t-shirt and jeans, and I've never seen a pitcher built like that. And Kyle Wright's got that kind of build where it's just like he is what they look like. 6'4", 220, like probably 7 or 8% body fat. The arm works really well. He's just this big physical right-hander, and he's got 2 separate fastballs, okay? So when you see him down in the 90-91 range late in start, do not fret. That's his 2-seamer, and it eats guys up, and he'll blow 96 past you when he wants, and he's got a plus curveball already. There's a hard cuttery slider in there, and the changeup has improved as this spring has gone on. And I think that when all is said and done, there might be some command hiccups there. I only got average command projected, but I think there's a chance for 3+ pitches and an average 4th in the slider. And he could move quickly if the strike throwing comes together faster than I anticipate. And I think he's got, like, not a number 1 starter ceiling. I am loath to put that sort of ceiling on an amateur player. But just shy of that, like a 2-3 type guy, someone who's worth 4 or 5 wins in his peak years. Yeah. So I think the Braves landed the guy in the draft for me. And he just adds this guy might go to high A next summer, double A next summer, and like be their 4th best starter there. So, I know that there are people who are going to say that this system is too pitching rich, but this was the best guy on the board, and I'm all about it. So, good for Atlanta. Oakland is on the board at 6 on the clock. Is Wright considered to be a difficult sign? Someone asks. Not really. He's a college junior. He's very signable. So I'll say no to that. Fell and talk at the same time. All right, so options here for 6 with Oakland. Austin Beck has worked out for them. Austin Beck worked out for the Braves, so they didn't take him. So working out for a team is not necessarily a sign that player is going to be drafted there. I'm not on Twitter checking to see if like Keith or Jim Callis have posted picks ahead of time. So they might already know who's going to go here. I know someone has texted me to tell me that a player who's going to come off the board in the comp round that has a deal, which we might talk about a little bit later. But for 6 at Oakland here, yeah, I think Austin Beck, the outfielder from North Carolina, high school outfielder from North Carolina, is a possibility. And then I've just sort of generally heard them linked to college bats in general, which could mean Adam Haseley or Pavin Smith from Virginia. Could mean Keston Hiura from UC Irvine. Their pick is in. MLB Network is at commercial. So I'm going to take a look at some questions here before we move on. Okay. Someone in chat is saying that the A's will take Beck, which is where I had him mocked, so that seemed apt, and we'll talk about him if that's the case. And yeah, there's just a lot of people in chat who are saying that McKay seemed really bummed that he went to Tampa. I think.
I mean, maybe it's not so much about Tampa, and it's just that he thought he was going 1-1, and then he
maybe
all the way to the fourth pick. I don't know, but he definitely didn't look happy.
People in chat want to know where Sestouli is. I just assume he's preparing for fatherhood or working on his yard.
It's a safe bet.
Okay, yeah, we're pretty caught up on chat because people are just interested in listening, and obviously, like, we're receiving information faster than we can process it during these drafts.
Yeah.
So I got to tell you though, last year when I was doing this for ESPN and like writing frantically, this is much better. I'll still write stuff when we're done for the night. I'll be up late, West Coast time, and we'll have ink and paper draft coverage in the morning, or, on the website. But this is nice. It's nice being able to do this and talk with people and sort of sift through all these guys and try to provide some sort of visual element to the coverage, because this process is driven by visual processes. So I think it's good to analyze it in that manner as well. Brandon McKay passed offer made to – okay, so Jim Callis has tweeted, friend of the show, Jim Callis, has tweeted that McKay passed on an offer made to him by Twins at 1-1.
Wow.
So it does seem as though those two – there was some financial negotiations that went on.
Well, apparently Keith Law tweeted that the Rays are going to use him as a two-way player all the way through to the big leagues.
I wrote on the site that all the way –
Yep, all the way through to the big leagues is what he said. So that'll be interesting to watch to see how that goes and how long that lasts.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I wrote that you could and probably should continue to evaluate him as both for as long as you can feasibly make it a part of his developmental plan. But I can't imagine anybody actually doing it. I just can't. All right, Oakland's pick is in, and they're announcing it. Some of you at home might have already heard it. Just know that Chris and I are piped into the online stream, and we might be getting it a little bit late.
The sixth selection of the 2017 MLB draft, the Oakland
Okay.
Austin Beck.
All right, so Oakland has selected Austin Beck from North Davidson High School in North Carolina. This is this draft's biggest pop-up guy. Wasn't on the showcase circuit last summer. Area scouts knew about him, but it's nice to see these guys at the showcase events where we can line them up against the other elite guys, where you can watch Austin Beck and Jordan Adel take batting practice in the same 2-hour span. And so the questions about Beck mechanically are about how much he's going to hit. And those questions are inflamed by the fact that we haven't seen him hit against elite high school competition on the showcase circuit. But aside from that, the tools are huge. Plus bat speed. You want plus raw power right now, might grow into more than that. He runs well. He throws well. There are some not makeup concerns. Makeup is, for me, is purely a work ethic thing. Off-field concerns are a character thing. That's when I write about them. I try to make that demarcation evident in the writing instead of lumping it all into one phrase. Beck's very fiery in like a Brett Lowry sort of way on the field, and it rubs some people the wrong way. I could care less. But he ripped 12 homers out this spring. So, there's big game power there that we've seen, at least in his high school games. So And like I said at the top of the stream, Oakland can't buy a talent like this on the open market if the guy hits. So I totally get it, even though there's risk associated. There's risk associated with all these guys. So there's just more here with Beck than there is with others. But I like the pick. I think it's it's justifiably high ceiling pick. And now Arizona's on the clock at 7. Mike Hazen, their general manager, I saw at the ACC tournament, and I mocked center fielder Adam Haseley from Virginia here to 7. So I think that's ultimately where things are gonna end up. And we'll check in with the mock, how the mock is going, probably somewhere in the middle of the first round. It's not worth doing it yet. Okay. Brendan, is there any Trackman data on Beck? That's a great question. Most of the Trackman stuff is measured at the showcase events, but I'm going to the website right now to check it out. You could go to trackmanbaseball.com and sift through the publicly available data. That's all. If you're looking at the sortable board, that's where I pulled everything from. So it's not like I've got any sort of special access that you don't have. Okay. I've got Austin Beck. What event was this from? I'm going to try to pull it up. Okay. I've got Beck's max exit velocity that was measured during this particular event was 97.6 miles per hour. It was during the 2015 season, so it's old data. Like I said, he didn't do anything at showcases as a rising senior. So he maxed out right up around 100 miles per hour with exit velo as far as measured publicly available data shows, but he was also an underclassman at the time. I'm sure, pardon me. I'm sure that the teams that had him in the workout like turned the Trackman on and got more recent exit velos. But yeah, I'm sure they're spectacular. The kid's bat speed is crazy. Okay. Arizona's pick is in. They've got 744 and 69 maybe. That'd be great. But I do expect that Hazy will be the pick here. I gotta text somebody though real quick.
Orlando Hudson.
Oh, is Orlando Hudson's in the house?
Yeah. Another random.
Okay, they took Smith.
Oh, wow.
The Arizona Diamondbacks select Nathan Smith, first base.
All right, then.
All right, so
I talked about Smith a little earlier with his obscene strikeout rate. He actually hit more home runs than strikeouts this year. He had 12 strikeouts and 13 home runs. That's obviously pretty ridiculous, even at the college level. And all around, he's just a great hitter. His performance has been there this year and also in past years. So I think just in terms of hitting, he's been one of the best performers in all of college. But of course, he plays first base, and the track record for college first basemen isn't particularly great. So even though this guy hit 342 with power this year, Cato kind of dings him down a little bit just because of that. I think I have him among the top 10 hitters, but he's not necessarily an elite guy just based on the numbers.
Okay. Yeah, Smith. I saw Smith at the ACC tournament too. Did they announce him as a first baseman? Or right fielder? I know he's worked out for teams in right field too. I'm sure that it was probably first base. So yeah, everything about Pavin Smith that clubs like you explained, and most of it exists on paper. There's power in there. There is. I'm just not sure how much of it is going to play in games. And even if you're looking at like average game power, I'm concerned that that might not be enough to play every day at first base. But this is, the quote unquote safe pick. So, I had Smith down, and I'll show you guys the board here in a second. The top guy left on my board is David Peterson, the lefty from Oregon right now, who I've got higher than anybody else because I just think he's a mid-rotation starter. It's only 88 to 92 with the fastball there, but it's heavy. And I think there's a chance he's got multiple above average to plus secondary pitches. So he's the top guy left on my board. So Smith, is a little bit of a reach compared to where else I have some of the other players. So I'm going to show you guys my board here. So you can see the top 5 guys are off the board. Peterson and Adel are the next 2 guys left. Beck I had at 9. He's done. You can see I had Smith all the way down at 20 overall. But again, this is the eyeball scouting side of things. And then if we were going to look at Cato, it's a different. Where was Smith on your rankings?
He was a little lower. I think just among hitters, he was maybe 7th or 8th.
Okay.
So there were definitely guys above him. Just on the hitting side, we had Hazley above him, Brent Rooker, KJ Harrison, guys like that. But
okay,
I mean, he's up there, but he's not necessarily wasn't necessarily the obvious choice right now, according to Cato. And there are a whole bunch of pitchers ahead of him too.
I'll remind everybody what the Cato projections look like here. As you can see, yeah, is he even on that first page?
Might not be.
No, I guess not. We're heading down. Jimmy Herron from Duke, JJ Schwartz. Let me just search for him.
Looks like
Haven. There he is, 30th, 31st.
31st. There we go.
So obviously teams have their own models that they're using to try to project these guys out. But for a statistically friendly selection, by our statistics, maybe not quite as favorable, not in an objective teams are using a mix of all this stuff. But if you're pointing to Peyton Smith as an analytically friendly pick, just the way our numbers point out right now, it's not compared to some other guys. So I don't know. It's interesting. All right. So Phillies on the board. I would say that I think Adam Hazley, the center fielder from Virginia, would be the guy. And just to have those guys flipped. I had them inverse on the mock draft. But I don't know. I don't know for sure. Let's check on what's going on in the chat. What sort of debaucherous chat questions we have. Does Jaron Kendall stay in the middle of the first round? White Sox or Kansas City, perhaps? Yes, I do think, I think you're on the correct teams. When I was at the Fayetteville Regional, Kansas City had a large contingent there, and I know you're thinking, Eric, Vanderbilt didn't play in the Fayetteville Regional. Correct. But they were damn sure all huddled around the guy's cell phone watching every Jaron Kendall at bat on their ESPN app on the phone when he was hitting, which to me seemed like kind of a blatantly obvious thing to be doing in front of me and a bunch of other scouts. So yeah, I think you're right. Jaron Kendall, I think, is an option in the middle of the first round. The White Sox at 11, I think, is a possibility. I'd say 9 to Milwaukee is maybe the earliest he'll go because that club likes tools, man, and Kendall's got him. He's got him. It's just concerns about swing and miss. Other chat questions. Why did Wright fall to 5, you would say? It's just randomness, just the way guys slot out. ultimately, even though he's the number one guy on my board, the thing that separates him from number 1 and number 5 is just a half grade of evaluation. That's it. So that's, you could pretty subjectively get there and not put at fault the first 4 teams for passing on the guy who's number 1 on my board. I'm not going to sit here and slaughter anyone for picking the 4 guys they did ahead of Wright. It's just finances probably played a role for the Twins. We'll learn more about that as the night goes on and we see them pick again. And this is just how things panned out. All right, Phillies pick is in. Manfred is announcing it. Okay.
Philadelphia Phillies select Adam Hazley, outfielder from the University of Virginia.
All right, so the pick was Adam Hazley, the center fielder from the University of Virginia. I think it's a good pick. Hazley doesn't always look the part from a scouting point of view. His swing is a little bit strange. It looked like he predetermines some swings sometimes. I'm going to put some video of the both UVA hitters in the chat right now for you guys to check out. All this video is from the ACC tournament. But yeah, Hazley, his feel for center field is so good. I was really taken aback by how crisp and efficient his routes were. And I don't have hard data on that, but just watching him for a couple games during that week, he's not a burner. He's not like Billy Hamilton or anything like that, but he's just always where he's supposed to be. He looks very comfortable. He dealt with high winds all week in Louisville with aplomb. And yeah, I really liked him in center field. And if you think he's an above average or better defensive center fielder, and I do, then so much pressure comes off the bat. And I'm pretty confident that his bat-to-ball skills, at the very least, are excellent and should carry him to everyday value. I think he's a pretty low-risk, average, everyday player for me. And I think it's interesting. It's interesting how he fits into the Phillies farm system, which it's like there are all these high-ceiling tools guys, and, of course, some of them, their ceilings aren't all that high. When Nick Williams and Jorge Alfaro are 19 years old, their ceilings are super high because there's the chance that they might figure out an approach. They might figure out a way to get on base more. But now at this point, realistically, they're not. So they're not high-ceiling players anymore. They just have all these loud tools. And the Phillies system is still full of guys like this and full of Latin American arms with at the lower levels. And now you've got this college performer. And it just adds, it's a new regime in Philly, man. So it's an interesting addition to a really good farm system. And I like this pick. I did not think he'd get there. I think he would have. I thought he would have been the choice if he were. And he was. So I think it's a solid pick by Philadelphia. It's not all that sexy, but I think it's very good. Did I get the Pavin Smith video into the chat yet, or did I neglect to do that? I think I have totally botched that. Okay. So I'm sticking the Pavin Smith video in. I've got some open side video from the ACC tournament where you guys can see, he's got to have impeccable timing if this swing is going to produce game power worthy of playing every day at first base. I'm not saying he doesn't. I don't know for sure, but yeah, I think it's going to take a pretty special feel for hitting to do it. All right, what do we got? Sestouli posted in the chat. He says, "I do not agree with teams hating on Adam Hazley, but how? I don't think him going 8th is teams hating on him. I just think there are other talented players." Any word on why Brendan McKay looked disappointed as hell to go to the Rays? Was he just holding back tears? Does he hate the Rays that much? I think you're just reading into it too much. You're looking at a kid whose life was changed in a moment. And if he gets emotional about that, he might not be comfortable with that, like being emotional in that way in front of millions of people. It might just, might be eating at him. I wouldn't worry about it. Tampa's a great organization. I'd be ecstatic to work for Tampa. or play for Tampa. I mean, essentially that's what it is. Remember, the draft is horrible for labor. It's miserable. No kid should have to go somewhere where he's picked to go. And it's awful. Just a reminder. There will be a periodic reminder on this stream. The draft is a thing. It's horrible. The players' union is chicken shit for letting it be a thing. It only serves to suppress wages. That's all it does. It's not about competitive balance. It's just about suppressing these kids' salary. Okay. Milwaukee's pick is in at 9. I had them mocked with Bukauskas. Ray Montgomery, their scouting director, who does an amazing job, has this propensity to just look at his board and go, hey, there's the best guy is there. Someone who probably shouldn't be here where we're picking. Let's take that guy. So I've had them attached to Jordan Adel and Austin Beck and perhaps Jaron Kendall, but I mocked them to Bukauskas because I think there's an element where you just look at your board and say, why is Bukauskas here? And you take him. Nope. They didn't take any of those guys. All right. All right, so Milwaukee took Keston Hiura, a second baseman. Look at me right now. Second baseman from UC Irvine. I love Keston Hiura. There's an issue here, and I'll talk about it in a second, but let's talk about what's great about Keston Hiura. He has lightning fast hitting hands. This is the most excited I've been to put video in the chat so far. Everyone go watch the video I have of Keston Hiura from this spring. His hitting hands are so freaking fast. It's unbelievable. It's like the college hitters I've scouted who have hands and wrists this quick. It's like Scott Kingery. Is that it? It might just be Scott Kingery. I've seen guys whose bats I like more than Hiura overall, but it's just so lightning quick. And there's above average raw power in there. I know he looks like a little guy, and he is, but there's above average raw power in there. I've seen it with my own eyes during batting practice. The problem with Hiura is he doesn't play defensively anywhere right now. There's an arm injury. I anticipate that he's going to have Tommy John after he signs. And so it's been hard for teams to evaluate him on the defensive spectrum. Now, he takes ground balls at second base during BP. He doesn't throw. He just fields grounders and then just sort of shuttles the ball away to someone close by. But his feet, his hands, they look good there. I think he can play there. I think he'll be fine there. And then if you're evaluating him as a second base prospect, purely as a second base prospect, and you line him up against other college hitters that were just second base only guys, this is the best guy in a long time. I couldn't find a pure second base. There are guys who have moved to second base, but I'm just talking a pure second base prospect. He's better than Scott Kingery was, and I loved Kingery and thought he deserved to go in the middle to back of the first round. He's tearing up AA right now. This guy's better. I'm glad he went in the top 10. I think he totally deserved to be talked about as a top 10 prospect. It makes me very happy that Keston Hiura went in the first round, and I think the Brewers got a hell of a player. What was Cato saying about Keston Hiura, Chris?
It liked him. It wasn't super crazy about him. I think he was a little bit behind Pavin Smith on my ranking. Hiura, he obviously performed very well this year. He had tons of walks, tons of doubles. He hit well over 400. But I guess the thing that kind of drags him down a little bit is that he's not in a tippy-top conference. He plays in the Big West, which is a big conference, but it's not up there with the ACC, the SEC, conferences like that. That being said, it's kind of hard to envision a better performance. So it might just be the upper bound of what Cato can kind of incorporate from a guy who's from a conference like that. And all the guys above him are from the elite conferences. So that's kind of the only knock against him, that, and I guess that he's a second baseman, and college second basemen, they don't generally turn into great players. Usually guys will come from more premium positions than that. But if you're just kind of looking at what he did in terms of doubles and home runs and strikeouts and all that stuff, it's hard to do better than Keston Hiura.
All right, the Angels picked Jordan Adel. the outfielder from Ballard High School in Kentucky. Adel is another guy. Back-to-back picks we've had where there are throwing issues. I saw Adel up to 94 off the mound last summer and missing bats with it and with a good breaking ball. And there was no way he was anything other than a hitter for me. He's another guy, plus bat speed. I've gotten McCutchen comps on like the bat, but there were questions about his bat-to-ball ability, people who thought there was too much swing and miss there. And then this spring, he's had issues throwing, where I've gotten reports where it's like, hey, this guy's got a 30 arm. And guys who touched 94 the summer before shouldn't be throwing with a 30 arm. So there's some concern about what might be going on medically with his throwing arm. But he's had a huge spring from a power hitting perspective. I'm in on the bat. There are some teams who are concerned about the swing and miss enough that they had him evaluated, I've heard, as low as the 4th round. I think this is a great pick for Anaheim. It's a very refreshing departure from what they have done with their last 2 first-round picks, which was take Taylor Ward, a catcher from Fresno State, under slot, and take Matt Theis, a first-base-only guy from Virginia who had very few strikeouts, under slot last year. And those 2 picks allow them to take Jahmai Jones and Brandon Marsh with their second-round picks in consecutive years. And I think those 2 guys are great prospects. But Ward and Theis are fringy guys for me. So this is totally different than that. I know there's some new blood in Anaheim's scouting department. And I think that this is a sign of that. And I really like this pick for Anaheim. So I'm going to tweet a link to the chat one more time. See if we can get some more people in here. We're at 400 people watching this thing right now, which I think is totally rad. That is way more than I thought was going to be in here. I'm going to tweet one specific. Where's that streamable Jordan Adel clip I had? Adel, I was down the line when Adel homered at the area code games, and there was a group of scouts behind me that like made audible kind of sexual sounds when it happened. And I have video of it, but for whatever reason, when I tried to upload it to YouTube, it rejected it. So I'm trying to find it on my on my streamable, like, but it's a mess here. Okay, I've got it. It's coming. All right, turn your headphones up. Yeah, I just posted the link in the chat. When you listen to it, like the sound, and these kids hit with wooded area code games, so like the sound is so pure. Hold on, I want to hear it. Yeah. Okay, so when you listen to this, like, keep in mind that everyone in area codes is a scout or an agent or a parent, basically. And just listen to the sound everyone in that ballpark makes when he vaporized that ball. So, yeah, I think Adel, I hope the arm strength comes back. He's a potential middle-of-the-order bat, man, if he hits. It's up there. So, all right, let's take a look at where my mock draft is at right now, okay? This is the first mock draft I've ever – I mean, you do them at home. Like, they're a fun little exercise to do. But, you know, I haven't been the lead – this is my first draft as, like, the lead prospect writer anywhere. So this is my first publicly available mock draft. So I'm going to screen share it with you right now and link to it in the chat as well. And it's good. Let's make fun of how bad it is at some point, because at some point it will be bad. But I'm pleasantly surprised right now. All right. I'm not always looking at where I am on camera either. So if you see like this or whatever, that's because I'm doing other shit. All right. The mock draft. Let's screen share it. Here it goes. Technology is amazing and not wrecking us as a society at all. It's wonderful. Okay. So I got number 1 wrong. I got 2 and 3 right. I got 4 wrong because they were flipped. There's a picture of Royce Lewis taken by the affable Bill Mitchell, whose stuff, now that photos are going to be more of a thing on the site, I really hope we get to use Bill's photos more. Right at 5 got Beck at 6. I got 7 and 8 were flipped. 9 I was wrong. and 10 I got right. So the next few that I had mocked, Aaron Kendall at 11, DL Hall at Pittsburgh, which is more, I'll be honest with you, it was a little more speculative than it was sourced. I just couldn't find anybody else I wanted to put there except for Shane Baz. Yeah, this is how the mock looks as we get rolling tonight. And obviously, Keston Hura at Detroit is already wrong. But like I said, that was a guy who I wasn't sure where to stick. It was an interesting exercise to do over the last couple weeks, as I talked about at the top of the stream, because there are a lot of factors that go into it, and some of them feel a little bit disingenuous as you go about them. Let's take a look at the chat and see what people are. What are you guys? You can even just put your commentary in the chat, and I'll post it. I want to hear what you guys are thinking about the draft. You guys have consumed, I assume, our stuff here at FanGraphs. You probably have been on MLB.com to look at Jim and John's stuff. You probably are reading Hudson's stuff at BA. You're reading Keith's stuff at ESPN. So you've got a lot of different perspectives on this draft so far, and I want to hear what people think. Oh, there's someone in the chat that thinks my tie is handsome. Thank you. It embodies the evening. Oh, that's right. Stop talking so we can hear the video. Yeah, that's right. I should have put on Michael Bolton or something while you listen to that Adel home run. Someone named Jeff has asked, just curious, but are teams required to take the full allotment of time, or could they just give their pick immediately when they're on the clock? Obviously, we know in the NBA and NFL drafts why teams have incentive to use their entire allotment of time because they can trade their picks. So I don't know why teams in baseball. I guess you can make calls and see if you can save money somehow, which is the whole point of the draft. But yeah, I don't know why teams don't just walk their pick up there. I know if I'm ever drafting for anything, here it is. I typically know these teams should know most of the time who's going ahead of them anyway. I know of some situations like we're getting to that place now in the draft where stuff that no one anticipated happening is going to happen. And so I know Brady Aiken. Cleveland didn't want to take Brady Aiken. They were going to take Colby Allard. But Allard went right ahead of them, and they scrambled and took Aiken. So, yeah, not everything – we're at that in the place in the draft now where or we're getting there, I should say. I think really after 15 in this draft particularly is when it will happen, where not everything is premeditated anymore. All right, the White Sox pick is in. We're waiting for MLB Network to get back to the draft and let us know what the hell's going on with the Chicago White Sox, who have in the last 7 months made their farm system so good. Did you people see that Luis Robert homered today in his second at bat as a member of the Chicago White Sox? He did. I'm assuming it was against pitching down in the Dominican. If he were here today and playing, I would have been there. I'm hoping he's in the AZL for a little while before they kick him out to an affiliate because I really want to see him. All right. Let's see what Chicago's got going on in their draft room. Can we see their board? Can you see the magnets on their board?
Kind of far away. I don't know.
I don't know, man.
If only.
What do they have? They've got it color-coded in a weird way.
Yeah, I wonder what that's all about.
Oh, God damn it.
Need the zoom lens in on that one.
All right, so let me clear off my mock here. I want to take a look at the Cato rankings again and see what's going on up top. Oh, okay, Berger went off. All right, this was – all right. So the White Sox have selected Jake Berger, third baseman from Missouri State. They had a guy who I did not recognize front and center for the Fayetteville Regional at which Berger and the Missouri State Bears were playing. And by the way, I'm just going to get this off my chest right now. Jeremy Eierman, Missouri State's shortstop, is a name for you all to remember for the first round next year. That's all I'll say. So Berger, I'm posting video in the chat. Oh, no, that's not video. that's jumbled nonsense letters. Berger, I did not like when I saw him at the Fayetteville Regional. I know there are teams that loved him, and Chicago was really the first place where I thought he had a chance to come off the board. I thought it was more likely 14 to Kansas City, maybe 15 to Houston, 17 to Seattle. He's gotten himself in better shape over the last year. Everyone who I talked to who saw him on the collegiate national team last summer thought he was a first baseman. The body is in better shape. As you'll see in the video I just posted in chat, he did not take a spectacular infield the day that I saw him. In fact, like he fell on his ass while he was taking infield. But he made some other plays at third base that makes you think, okay, like I can see why some people think this guy can stay at third base for a while. Missouri State's got a Trackman. Teams have a lot of data about the exit velos there, and they're good. I don't know specifically how good they are. I know he and Brett Rooker are at the top of the class among college bats as far as average exit velocities are concerned. And there is plus raw power there. I think there's some stiffness to him in general, which turns me off. And again, this isn't my favorite kind of prospect. You guys, if you read my stuff, you know I like athletes. And Berger, I don't think is one. But there's definitely power here. And so I think the pick is okay. What do you think about Berger from a statistical perspective, Chris?
He doesn't look all that great. He hit really well this year, but he was in kind of a lower conference in the Mississippi Valley Conference. The power was there. He had lots of home runs, and he walked more than he struck out. But if you kind of look behind the 22 home runs, there's not a lot of other power there. I think it looks like the home runs made up close to a third of all the hits he got this year. So it's just kind of power and not a ton else. And that combined with the fact that he wasn't necessarily in an elite conference that caused Cato to drop him down a good bit. He was, I think, the 25th hitter overall by Cato. So definitely not well acquitted. And frankly, I think he's the worst hitter we've had so far, according to Cato. So I don't know. It's kind of the same thing as I said with Keston Hira. It's kind of hard to tell with guys who are in a lower conference just because there's probably an upper bound as to how well they can perform. But Berger wasn't all that dominant this year. He was more good than great. It's a third baseman, which isn't a super elite defensive position. So kind of the whole package, Cato's a little underwhelmed.
Somebody in the chat has asked this following question about Jake Berger. His comp is Jed Jerko? ?
Jed Jerko.
Yeah, did they mention that on the MLB Network broadcast? I think that's fascinating.
I don't know. I didn't notice, but that's probably where it came from because I know they've been doing it with everything.
Right. Yeah, hey, the casual fan wants to know what if the gun they like is coming back in style. All right, here's 12 with Pittsburgh. This is an interesting pick.
With the 12th selection of the 2017 MLB draft, Pittsburgh Pirates select
All right.
a right-handed pitcher from Concordia.
All right, so Shane Baz, the righty from Concordia Lutheran High School in Texas, is Pittsburgh's pick at 12. I had him mocked here on my previous one, but thought they'd get scared of his signability when I did the final one today. Pittsburgh drafted a kid in the second round last year named Nick Lodolo, who was also a strong TCU commit, as Shane Baz is, and they couldn't get a deal done. So I thought that might be a concern of Pittsburgh's. It apparently is not. Baz has arguably the best present stuff among high school pitchers. It's right there with Gore. It's better. He's got better stuff than Hunter Green does. But there's violence, there's effort. He's had command issues. He has, if you go to the sortable board, and you can sort, if you look at the sortable board, and I'll show you guys on the screen sharing in a second here. But if you go to the sortable board, this is the guy in the class with the best spin rates. It's like 2,700, 2,800 on the fastball and the breaking ball, respectively. And Pittsburgh is big on that. if you had to pick, I was told that a couple of Pittsburgh's early picks in last year's draft were made primarily because of spin rate. So let me get there and show you guys how some of these high school arms rack up spin rate wise in this year's draft. By going to the sortable board, and I'll show you. I'm moving my mouse all over the place. It's craziness. I feel like a StarCraft player or something. All right. Here it comes. 3, 2, 1. All right, so here are the RPMs. And if you're going on the sortable board on your own and want to play around, it's fastball. It's max recorded fastball RPMs on the left, recorded breaking ball RPMs on the right. So you can see that Baz is way up there as far as his class is concerned on both accounts. Alex Scherf, prep righty also from Texas, is up there as well. But he's sort of a big, burly thrower more than he is a pitcher. Like, there's just teams have problems with his delivery. Hans Krauss, excuse me. Hans Krauss is a prep righty from California who's always had a monster curveball. His breaking ball spin rate is obviously terrific. Down here, the interesting name is Trevor Rodgers, right? Like, that 1,800 spin rate on the breaking ball is kind of concerning. And frankly, one of the reasons that I was a little bit apprehensive about having him up as high on my board as he's been projected to go in the draft. But yeah, so Shane Baz, I think it's a great pick for Pittsburgh as long as they can get him signed. Houston at 15 has a little bit more money to play with because of the Cardinals hacking scandal. They were gifted 2 of St. Louis's picks, and so they had the extra money that I thought would allow them to coax Baz back to 15, maybe with an overslot deal. But if that was going on, Pittsburgh has called their bluff. Specifically, what we're looking at pick value wise here. So Houston picks 15th, but has the 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11th highest bonus pool. Pittsburgh picked 12th and has, is it just above that? Oh, no, the Pirates have 3, 4, 5, 6, like the 7th highest bonus pool. So they've got some money too. All right, so yeah, Baz makes sense there. All right, who's on the clock here? 13, it's Miami. Miami, I've heard with college arms, Alex Faedo, the righty from Florida, perhaps. But I mocked them with Helio Ramos, the center fielder from Puerto Rico, high school center fielder with huge tools, but who has had trouble making contact even this spring in Puerto Rico. Miami lately has been on like the high upside athletes, the kind of guys who like the Phillies used to take. And I believe Marty Wolliver, who used to be Phillies scouting director, is now part of the staff at it with Miami. But they've targeted these high upside athletes in recent years, and I think I projected them to do it again here at 13 with the Marlins. Their pick is in. Let's see what's happening with the chat. Let's see what's going on. Who will be the first Canadian taken? This is a good question. The Canadian kids who I have one of them on my top 100, and that's Jason Willow from Victoria, whose body I think has good physical projection. I think he's going to grow into above average power, and I really like his field to hit. Not an infielder for me, probably a right fielder, but I do believe in the bat and the physical projection. That's my top Canadian. But you've got Landon Leach, right-handed pitcher with pretty good arm acceleration, might be in that 3rd or 4th round mix. You've got Adam Hall, a shortstop who runs pretty well. End of things that he does for me. And then you've got Clayton Keys, like his big power hitting outfielder who might go. Okay. Marlins pick is in, and it is Carlsbad High School left-hander Trevor Rodgers. Let me get some Shane Baz video going in the chat because it's pretty interesting. Shane Baz, the Shane Baz stuff you're about to see is from, several events last summer, including him squaring off against the Southern California area code team, which was just loaded with Hunter Green, Nick Allen, Garrett Mitchell, all sorts of guys who ended up on my top 100. And it also gives you like a behind home plate look at what a 2,800 RPM fastball looks like, because one of them is in there somewhere. Also, he's got terrific hair. Bass does. I know he's cut it this spring, but like, Shane, if you're watching this, I don't know, you should keep it. Let me get Trevor Rodgers video going too, and we'll talk about Rodgers. Rodgers I had as early as 8 at like an extreme, just because I knew Philly liked him. Pat Gillick went to go see Trevor Rodgers. Okay, and if you're Pat Gillick, you don't fly to El Paso and drive to Carlsbad, New Mexico, unless like your team is serious about a kid. But 8 always seemed high, and I just didn't. While I kind of had him ranked in a range on my board that made sense for Philly's second pick, he just never seemed feasible to get there. So I thought there was always a chance that maybe they looked at him at 8. But Rodgers basically from as high as 8 at an extreme onward was a possibility to go. I thought 14. I had him mocked to 14 with Kansas City, who I now think will probably take Jaron Kendall, by the way. And he's just lefties that touch 98 don't grow on trees. And that's what this guy is. He sits 92, 94, but there's 98 in there. And then it's like a funky lower slot where I've heard some Andrew Miller comps. But as far as the secondary stuff goes, just in a vacuum, it's like fringe to average. So it plays up because of his slot against left-handed hitting. And if you want to project a 55 slider, like I'm cool with that. But this kid's going to be 20 this summer. It's a high school draftee who's going to be 20. And so that's a concern as well. And I don't think it's a bad pick. But, you know, like I said, as we started the stream, this was the guy who I thought there was going to be the greatest disparity between where he was picked and where I had him ranked. And I don't know off the top of my head if that's true. It might be. But I bet it is. Kansas City is on the clock, followed by Houston and the Yankees. I think if I had to guess the next 3 picks right now, I'd say Kendall, Houston. Oh, Houston's tough now. Hold on. Let's think about this. I think Nick Prado at 16 to the Yankees is the pick there. Bukowskis, JP Bukowskis has to go at some point too. Nate Pearson, the junior college righty from Florida who was up to 102 in a bullpen. He's going to come off the board pretty soon. Wouldn't surprise me if that were 18 to Detroit. DL Hall, the lefty, the high school lefty from Alabama. I think he'd be a good pick here. Any of these guys sounds pretty good for these selections. The top guy left on my board is and then of course David Peterson, the lefty from Oregon, is the top guy on my board. And I think would be an awesome pick anywhere he goes at this point. Minute 41. Okay, Chris, ready? There's a chat question specifically for you.
Jesus.
It says it's from someone named Chris Mitchell.
Okay.
They say, I love your name. Also, how do you maintain such a healthy physique? Go ahead and talk about that.
Well, you know, I'm very religious about going to the gym. I try to go at least 5 days a week. I try to go 6 or 7 when I can. So it's just about kind of doing a little bit every day. I don't like eat ridiculously healthy or anything like that. I guess try to eat generally healthy and work out almost every day. And that's basically all there is to it.
Yeah, like every other stat nerd does, right?
Yeah, of course. We're always at the gym. All the analytics guys.
Yeah, all the analytics guys hit the gym real hard. Someone named Peg Leg Pete asks, is Shane Baz the type of pick that will force Pirates to pick guys that will sign below slot with the rest of their top 10 round picks? I don't think it has to be the rest of their top 10, but I do think that they're going to have to do some math as they go to make sure that they keep things tight. I would anticipate there being an analytically driven underslot deal at some point during the rest of their first 10 round picks. Who would you take, Braxton Garrett, pre-Tommy John, or Mackenzie Gore? Gore for me. I was skeptical about Garrett's delivery at points last spring. I didn't think he got through and used his lower half enough. And then I had people tell me I was a moron for that. I'm not going to take glory in the fact that the kid's having Tommy John. It sucks. But I would take Gore, not just because of my perceived delivery issues with Nick Prado went 14 to Kansas City. All right, so we'll talk about him in a second too. But I would just think Gore's secondary stuff across the board is better. All right, so at 14, the Royals have taken Huntington Beach first baseman and left-handed pitcher Nick Prado, who was seen as the most polished high school bat in the class. I had him mocked 16 to the Yankees. He's got a really quick bat. And just gets the barrel into the zone very quickly. He has good back control. He's got a really good approach. He is a really terrific feel for the strike zone. And if you read in the sortable board, my capsule, you can sort of see that I've seen him have take issue with more than one umpire that he doesn't think has as good an idea of the strike zone as he does. And I think that he's gotten some Joey Votto comps in part because of that from scouts. He's not like this big 6'4" rangy guy who you think is going to grow into elite raw power or anything like that. But if you want to put a future 6 on his bat, a future 6 on the raw power, I'm not going to argue with you. And so it has a lot of like the Dominic Smith feel to it, where you feel good about this kid hitting. You think there's enough raw power and he'll grow into a little bit more that it's what you're looking for every day at first base. So I like this pick a lot. And I think Kansas City got a potential middle of the order bat. But obviously when we're talking about first basemen and high school prospects in general, there's just risk there because the developmental path is longer than it is for a college player. So we got Prado off the board. I got that. I hear the Jordan Adel. Do I have it still playing on a loop somewhere? I think I do, yeah. On my stream. I've just heard it over and over again for the last 15 or 20 minutes and not done anything about it because it's just so soothing. Oh, the other thing to mention about Prado is really great athlete for a first baseman. 88 to 90 on the mound with if you want to, he's a prospect on the mound as well. 88 to 90, average curveball, average changeup projection. That's kind of what Prado is on the mound, and that's not great as a prospect, but it is a prospect.
They had him as a 70 fielder according to MLB and a 60 arm.
Yeah, that's aggressive. It's obviously the arm strength. You put a 6 on the arm strength, that's fine. I mean, the guy's touching 90, 92 at peak on the mound. A 7 on the glove at first base is probably a little aggressive, but if you wanted to put a 6, like a 55 or 60 on it, I think that's pretty easy to do. I've got a future 55 on Prado's glove on the sortable board. I wouldn't argue with you if you put a 6 on it. I think that's fine. So yeah, Prado might be one of two Huntington Beach high schoolers that goes tonight. Right-handed pitcher and catcher Hagen Danner is the other one. Danner's been up to 96 on the mound. But he's also been like hurt at times. I have him turned in as a catcher because I think there's plus raw power, and I just want to see if he focuses on catching. If he gets to that power and can become a viable defensive catcher, that's really good. So I have him turned in as a catcher, but most orgs have Danner in as an arm. And Danner is the kind of guy who, for me, is the type of player you move to the mound if it doesn't work out hitting, and just let him throw the fastball and the curveball in the bullpen, and like that's it. Because that's kind of all I think he'll be anyway. So like that's why I have him turned in as a catcher. All right, let's see what's going on in chat. How many rounds are tonight and tomorrow? So tonight are the first 2 rounds, and then tomorrow are rounds 3 through 10 that start at 10 a.m. Pacific time, my time. So I think 1 p.m. Eastern, right? Yeah. And then rounds, I'm not kidding you, 11 through 40 are done on a conference call on the 3rd day. And that's when I start to feel like I'm dying. 80 grade hair. Illegal Blues says has 80 grade hair on someone. I assume it's Baz or me.
I don't think it's me. Just putting that out there.
Oh, yeah?
I don't think I'd call this 80 grade.
John W. asks, how big of a knock is Jaron Kendall's disappointing performance with wooden bats? It's a huge – it has to be – it's the only reason that he's falling, because everything else about the tool profile is really good. He's a plus runner. He's got above average plus raw power. The question is just how much he's going to hit. And that was the question coming into the year. And he just exacerbated those. It's just, he just hasn't done anything to solve them. So, yeah, I mean, at some point, someone's going to look at their board and realize that they just can't pass on someone with these tools anymore and try to figure out a way to get him to hit. You know, the guys, I sort of figured someone from my board that I really liked was going to fall. Those guys right now are David Peterson, DL Hall, Sam Carlson, who was always projected to fall. And is that kind of it right now? Yeah, and Bukauskas. I think Bukauskas at this point you could say he's kind of fallen. Houston's pick is in, and Manfred is announcing it. So they will be quiet.
The 15th selection of the 2017 MLB draft, the Houston Astros select J.B. Bukauskas, a right-handed pitcher.
All right, so the Astros took North Carolina righty J.B. Bukauskas, who has fallen in part because he's had 2 bad starts here towards the end of the year. One against Davidson and one during the ACC tournament. So Bukauskas, the knocks on Bukauskas are he's small, which I don't really care about. Or he's short, rather. And that obviously, as the season has gone on, his stuff hasn't been quite as good. It's been a little more hittable, and his performance has been down. And when you look at Bukauskas and see that there's some violence to the delivery and see his size, you start to wonder about his durability and about whether or not he's a reliever or not. And I know there are a lot of teams who do think that ultimately he's a reliever, or at least is a reliever initially. And the fact that he started to look like he was breaking down as the season went on, it's just made people more concerned that ultimately that was going to be the case. Now, what's interesting about Bukauskas as a prospect long-term has been, if you remember, he reclassified as a senior in high school so that he wouldn't be an old for the class, like high school senior. So he told teams not to draft him as a senior in high school, so he wanted to go to college. So I think this is a great pick for Houston. When he's at his best, Bukauskas is 93 to 96 with a plus slider. It's a plus slider right now. He overthrows it. And what I mean by that is not that he throws it too hard or with too much effort, just that he uses it a lot. A lot. if he's behind in the count, he's throwing the slider. It's not just a swing and miss pitch. It's I'm behind in the count. This is what I need to go to. So there's already 2+ pitches there if you look at the fastball and the slider, and then you have to project in the changeup and command. But if you're willing to do that, and I am, then he's a potential mid-rotation starter. There's just this risk now that he ultimately can't hold up over a full season. What statistically, how does he line up for you, Chris?
He's one of Cato's top pitchers. He was really good at North Carolina this year. He amassed a lot of strikeouts. His strikeout numbers weren't quite as good as they were last year as a sophomore, but they were still really good. His K-9 was up over 11, which is always a good place to be. Kind of has a little bit of a home run problem the last couple of years. He has 13 between this year and last. And Cato also kind of dings him a little bit for being 5'11". It's usually more in favor of those guys who are 6'3", 6'4", and up. But overall, his performance has been really good between what he did this year and what he did last year. And just looking at his birthday, he's younger than most of the guys in the class, and that's something Cato takes into account. He doesn't turn 21 until October 11th, so that makes him almost aged like a sophomore. And given that, and paired with what he's done in such an elite conference, Cato's all over it. And I'm not necessarily surprised that the Astros would go with a Cato guy, just because they always kind of seem to end up with guys like that. I know last year when I looked at all the projections for the guys in the first round and the other rounds, like the Astros were always showing up next to the guys who had better Cato projections than everyone else. So they're an organization that puts a lot of emphasis on analytics and are probably looking at kind of the same things I am. So it's no surprise that they'd go with someone like Bukauskas, who's has a long track record of performing.
Interesting, yeah. Houston's such an interesting blend of scouting and analytics, and I guess it does. I think they do lean more toward the latter, but it is very interesting. I
mean, they get these guys like Garrett Stubbs or like Tony Kemp, guys like that who are just college performers, and then they perform in the minors as well. And if you ask a scout about them, they're probably not going to give you the greatest of scouting reports. But if you look at the numbers, they look like some of the best players out there.
All right. Someone wants to make sure you're aware that Gosuke Kato has a 136 adjusted runs created plus at high A right now.
I was unaware. I kind of stopped following him because he didn't look like he was ever going to be anything, but I guess we'll see.
Scott in the chat is letting me know that Berger's selection had a bigger delta with where he was ranked on my board than Rodgers did. So thank you for that. Tim is asking, what does an increased spin rate do to the baseball? And the answer is that the seams on the baseball disrupt the air around the baseball and impact the way the ball interacts with gravity and the air around it, and it changes friction and makes the ball move or makes the ball not move. And there's generally shown to be a correlation between higher spin rates and swinging strikes, as well as just velocity in general. There are certainly pitchers I've scouted them with superlative spin rates who it's not functional. Who's the guy that had the big spin rate the one year in the fall league? It was a Phillies reliever, last name of Johnson. It might have been Jay Johnson, who had like one of the better breaking ball spin rates. This is when like spin rates were just becoming a thing anyone was discussing at all. He had one of the better breaking ball spin rates in the fall league one year, but just because of where his arm slot was, it wasn't useful spin. That's the phrase that I think we've sort of, as a community, decided upon. And so his curveball just wasn't that great. All right, what else we got going on in – okay, question about Jake Berger. Range limited. Arm is average? Yeah, it's probably about average, maybe above on max effort. Let's see. Oh, we have the pick in for the Yankees at 16. Oh, Swisher's there? Oh, that's great. Love Nick Swisher. Would have totally like to hang out with that guy.
For sure.
What a nice guy. Oh, some kid's gonna announce the Yankees pick. That'll be nice.
Yeah.
All right, I hope this kid smashes it. Let's go. Wouldn't it be awful if this kid had to announce like that they picked Seth Romero or something?
Would be.
That'd be awful. Let's hope they didn't do that to this kid.
We want all young people to play ball, and no one illustrates that mission better than Landis. He's not allowed any obstacles to deter him from pursuing his dream of playing.
Are we up to date on video in the chat?
On behalf of Major League Baseball, tonight we are delighted to invite Landis Sims to announce the first round selection for the Yankees. But first,
Oh, okay. They're showing the whole package. All right, I'll answer a couple. Let's do a couple more chat questions here before the Yankees pick gets announced. Then we'll talk about that. All right. How many 2017 draftees will slot immediately into your top 100? Is that something you could tell at this point, or do you need to see pro action? It's a good question. So typically an average draft is like 8 to 12 guys find their way onto a Hondo. This year it's going to be on the low end of that. Anybody who's a 50 future value or above on the sortable board, it basically has an argument. And this year that's like the first 5 guys are all 55s or better. So they're locks. That's Wright, McKay, Green, Lewis, Gore. And then after that, it's a bunch of guys who like might kind of get on there, maybe. Adam Hazley is a 50. That's not a slam dunk. Jordan Adel is a 50, probably not a slam dunk because of the risk associated with him with injury. But then again, like if some of the 45s enter pro ball and destroy like Lucas Urseg did last summer, then they might find themselves on 100 right in this offseason already. So 5 of them for sure will be on the next 100. And then probably somewhere between 3 and 5 others might make it on, or at least be honorable mention, like in that section of the list beneath the 100 where it's like, here are all the other 50s that I think have a great argument to be on here, but just didn't make the cut. The Yankees still haven't announced their pick, so more questions. Okay, here's a pro ball question that's interesting. What range would Jesus Sanchez be in your top 100 prospects if you re-ranked them today? The answer is that he'd probably still be towards the back of the list, but definitely on it. Maybe the 55 tier probably ends at this point somewhere in the 60s. So probably anywhere from like 60 to the back of the list, somewhere in there. That's Tampa Bay Rays outfield prospect, Jesus Sanchez. Who has a better career, Ian Anderson or Kyle Wright? Wright, I think Wright I have evaluated ahead of Anderson right now. Obviously, I don't know. But I'd say Wright. Okay. Terry Fuller. Does he get an 80 raw power? I have a 70 on him. Terry Fuller is a prep first baseman, basically from Georgia, who looks like an SEC linebacker and hit a ball like 500 some feet during a workout at the Marlins park. But I got a 70 on it because it was ultimately with an aluminum bat. So, all right, Yankees pick is in. This young man is going to announce their first round selection. Wow. All right, so the Yankees drafted injured South Carolina right-handed pitcher Clark Schmidt. Schmidt needs Tommy John, so he's going to miss most of next year. But he had mid-rotation stuff, some of the better stuff among the college pitchers in this year's draft would sit like 92, 94 It's a long arm action, a lower 3/4 slot. And there were some people who were kind of worried that left-handed hitters would see the ball early out of his hand and pro ball, and the fastball velocity would play down. But what's interesting about Schmidt is, some of the tunneling data that Baseball Prospectus has unveiled. This is a guy who, like, if you look at the way the ball comes out of his hand, it looks like what that data is describing, where the stuff looks all of his pitches look the same coming out of his hand to a point, and then dart in different directions. His sliders, his vertical drop, his fastball has some arm side tail to it. His changeup has some combination of both. So certainly among the college pitchers in a vacuum on stuff, this is probably about where Schmidt would have slotted had he not been hurt. But he just happens to have blown out a few weeks ago and is going to miss a year for Tommy John. So I suppose the Yankees just didn't like anybody else on the board at this point, probably because Prado was off of it. All right. So on deck, we've got Seattle, Detroit, San Francisco, the Mets, and Baltimore. And so just to keep some names in mind for who we might hear soon, I do think David Peterson, the lefty from Oregon, his time is nigh. DL Hall, the prep lefty from Alabama, who I had 10th on my board, is still available. I think his name will be called soon. Evan White, the plus running, plus fielding backwards first baseman at Kentucky, I think is a good bet to go 19 to San Francisco. 20 to the Mets becomes Jaron Kendall. Yeah, I think Jaron Kendall maybe finds a home at 20 to the Mets. And then Baltimore at 21, I've got on college arms. At this point, maybe that's Faedo. They've taken some college arms early the last couple years who have some relief stink on them, but they've tried it anyway. Cody Sedlock, Keegan Aiken, two guys from last year's draft. I expect them to do something similar at 21 coming up. Seattle's pick is in, and they're talking about Clark Schmidt, though, still on MLB Network. Schmidt I've never seen in person, so I don't have any video. But it was an interesting pick, and one that I think requires a little bit more mental stewing. I'm not sure how I feel about it yet. One thing to keep in mind is Seattle's on the clock here. New scouting director, right? Tom McNamara has been the scouting director for Seattle for a long time, was promoted, and is not running the show anymore, as far as I know. So here's the pick. Wow. Sweet. All right, so Seattle took Evan White. White is really bizarre. He's a plus runner that plays first base right now, and some scouts want to see him tried in center field because he runs so well and is athletic, and others think that that's a ludicrous idea because he's a potentially elite defensive first baseman. Offensively, he's a right-handed hitting contact, like gap-to-gap contact hitter. He squares everything. I have a future 6 on the bat. I don't know how much power this guy's going to hit for. I think he might hit for like fringy game power. But he squared up Faedo. Like, I've seen him hit good college pitching. He might be like a 30-plus doubles guy. I don't know. It's strange. But he's a bat right, throws left guy who just in general, they just don't exist. Jason Lane, Cody Ross, Ryan Ludwig. I mean, I know everyone says Ricky Henderson. Ricky Henderson's just a freak of nature in all facets. I don't care the way he hit and threw. But there is some precedent for guys who are not in a favorable place on the defensive spectrum because they throw left-handed and they're limited by that, who hit enough to have some sort of big league career. White is my favorite player in this draft, but just because he's so strange. What say you, Chris, about Evan White as a Cato guy?
He's doesn't look that great. He's kind of middle of the pack, I guess.
Is it because of the power?
Yeah, it's because of the power, and also obviously that he plays first base. First baseman never project well, pretty much, and he's shown doubles power, especially this year. He has 24 doubles this year, but in terms of home runs, it hasn't been anything all that special. He just has 10 on the year. So he's a very good hitter. Played in the SEC, he hit 373, drew a decent number of walks, but I think it's, again, comes down to the fact that he's a first baseman, and when you're a first baseman, there's kind of a very little margin for error there, and seeing how he doesn't have great power, Cato kind of bumps him down a little bit. He does have 15 steals between this year and last, which is unusual for someone who plays first base, so I think that kind of backs up what you were saying before, how he's such a great athlete and could probably get by in the outfield. But even with that, Cato is not really a fan just because it doesn't like college first baseman. And unless you're really crap out of the ball, it's not going to put out a good projection.
All right, some chat questions here that we're getting. Who do you see as the fastest mover in the class? I do think Bukauskas can move quickly if a team just put him in the bullpen. I wouldn't advocate for that. But I suppose Houston is in a place where they're trying to win the damn thing right now. So if there were a team who I thought might try it, it's them. So that's a possibility. I think on the offensive side, White is a possibility to move pretty quickly. Hiura, as long as he's healthy, but of course there might be a surgery there and some time off. So that's maybe not the best name to toss out there. Let's see. Someone thinks this is the least productive chat ever. Thank you. We're talking about baseball, so I guess, yeah, it kind of is horribly unproductive. Let's see. Oh, yeah, thanks you guys for alerting me, by the way, that the feed was frozen on Chris for a little while, but that should be fixed now. People are asking if the Yankees are going to save money with this pick, and I haven't heard that as a possibility. I think that they might. Well, let's take a look at what's going on and see. The Yankees had just under $7 million in pool money to spend. And my sweater's coming off, by the way. That was pretty low as far as the rest of baseball is concerned. It's probably in the bottom third. I think it might be the bottom 10 or 12 teams, maybe. So where else do they pick? Who could they be trying to move back? It would make sense to me for Schmidt to be an underslot guy because he is hurt. And I hadn't heard him up this high. Again, but we're at, like I said before, this is like sort of that range in the draft where I wouldn't assume that everything everyone does is premeditated anymore. And so it's possible that the guys they liked were off the board, and Schmidt was just the next best guy that they thought highly of. All right, so the Yankees pick 16. Okay, they pick again at 54. So I can't see them. Maybe they're able to go underslot with Schmidt and push one guy down the board. I don't think they can control who it is. There are too many teams who pick multiple times between now and the Yankees' next pick, including Houston, who picks right in front of them at 53. And if Houston wants to allocate a ton of money at 53, they can because they pick at 56. So Houston could take someone way over the 1.2 million slot at 53 and take this year's version of Thomas Eshelman, which ironically might be Connor Siebold from Cal State Fullerton at 56, and catch whoever the Yankees are hoping to at 54 at 53. So that's, even right in front of them, that's a huge prohibitor. Pittsburgh picks at 42 and 50, although with Baz already in tow, I can't see them doing another overslot thing at 42 or 50. Does anybody else pick multiple times other than the obvious ones? Like, Cincinnati and Minnesota and Tampa. No, not really. Okay, so there are definitely landmines for the Yankees if what they're trying to do with Schmidt is go under slot and move someone back. I'm not saying that it's an impossibility, but just looking at the board, I can't see how the hell they do it. Yeah, but a good question. All right, what else we got? I totally understand. Here's a question from Joe. I totally understand that first base doesn't project well. But what if we project White, Smith, and McKay as left fielders? Okay. That question's from Joe. That's not totally ridiculous. But for McKay, it might be. I don't think McKay has the athleticism to play out there. White does specifically. Smith, I think that that's fine. But how much more difference in there is the offensive? How much different is the offensive baseline in Major League Baseball at left field than it is at first base? It's not very much. So I'm not sure how much pressure that even takes off any of their bats. All right, Detroit is up. Their pick is in. Who did the Mariners take at 17? Oh, that's right. They took White. The draft's not going fast enough. I forgot. It was forever ago. All right, the pick is in. They're announcing. All right. So, excuse me. I have a sinus infection. Detroit took Alex Faedo. Faedo, if you would ask me in January if you would have asked me who I thought would go number 1 overall, it would have been Faedo. Because as a sophomore, he was a lot of 93 to 95 with FU movement and a plus slider that he located at will. And he just filled the strike zone, and there was changeup projection there. And he just looked like what Kyle Wright looks like now, where it's this guy, barring something freak, some sort of injury or whatever, this is a mid-rotation starter. But Faedo's got knee issues with both knees, and his stuff was down this year, and so teams were kind of off of him. And early in the year, when his stuff was not great, but scouting directors were in there to see him, they were like, well, we'll come back later in the year. We know that this guy isn't – we know he's better than this. So we'll all be back, and this will be fine. But his stuff never really picked back up. And so that's why he's fallen to the middle of the first round. And again, this is a guy who just wasn't on my mock drafts because I think it was just a situation like this where you look up, he's the top guy left on your board, and you take him, but nobody was actively in pursuit of him. And he might work out great for Detroit. Kyle Funkhauser is back. His velocity is all the way back. He's got a better changeup now than he had in college. So the Tigers have done this before where they've taken guys whose stock has been down during their draft year beneath what it has been when they were underclassmen, and it's working out right now with Funkhauser. And we'll just have to wait and see on Faedo. Chris, when you sent me your initial Cato stuff,
yeah,
your first draft was all 3 college seasons measured more or less evenly, and then your update was more heavily weighing their sophomore and junior season performances. Do you remember off the top of your head how that impacted Faedo specifically, and what do you think of him in general?
That what I sent you the first time was just for hitters, so I didn't have that for Faedo. But the numbers kind of agree with what you said in that his performance has ticked down a little bit this year. His ERA has actually improved. It's gone from 3.18 to 2.6. But if you dig a little deeper and look at some of the peripherals, it's been trending in the wrong direction. His strikeouts are a little down. His walks are up a good bit. He's still been good this year. It's not like he's been bad. He's still been one of the best pitchers in college baseball, frankly, but he's fallen down a good bit. Cato had us in number 12 among all pitchers, which is good, but it's not spectacular, and it's not really where he was trending coming after the 2016 season. He's also a little bit on the old side. He was born in 1995, so he'll turn 22 this winter. So it's kind of another area where he grades out a little worse than most of his peers. So all in all, he's pretty good, but not as good as he was last year, and kind of trending in the wrong direction.
All right. Let me just see how much time we have left on the. Now I look like I'm in the Addicted to Love video without the sweater on. All right. San Francisco's got 15 seconds left. Doug Mapson, like their national cross-checker, who was the guy whose idea it was to make Brandon Belt a full-time first baseman. And I think he was the signing scout, the area scout for Greg Maddux. He was at the Fayetteville Regional. I'm trying to think if there's anybody there that he, other than Berger, that he might have been there to see specifically. They're showing the draft room in San Francisco, and I see John Barr, who lives outside Philly, has no beard. I see sometimes he's got a full, like, Santa Claus beard, and other times he does not have a beard at all. And there he is, and he's beardless. Disappointed. I've had San Francisco attached to college bats. The question is, like, are any of them on the board at this point? I'm not sure Kendall is necessarily their kind of guy. They took Brian Reynolds last year, who was great value, I think, when they took him, who had some similar question marks about his bat-to-ball ability as Kendall does this year. So I'm not sure. But this will be an interesting pick. We've also have them attached to Luis Campusano Bracero, a very toolsy Georgia prep catcher, who I think will probably go in the 30s to, like, the Twins, Reds, like in that range. Those teams who are getting they can take a high ceiling second pick. Commissioner Manfred is announcing the pick now.
17 MLB draft. The San Francisco Giants select Helio Ramos, an outfielder.
All right. San Francisco took Helio Ramos, the center fielder from Leadership Christian in Puerto Rico. Listening to scouts talk about this guy is fun because they're like, why isn't this guy, if he were born in America, he'd be going to college to play football for someone. He'd be someone's running back or linebacker somewhere. He's a plus runner. Some scouts have plus raw power projected on him. But then they all talk about how he can't hit and how he's struggling even to hit Puerto Rican pitchers like this spring. And so he's one of these high ceiling guys who, if he hits, he's a monster. And if he doesn't, he might not ever get out of AA. And it's just, I know that sounds like, why are you taking this guy in the first round then? But there's just so much variance with any of these guys, even the perceived safe guys anyway, that I'm actually a fan of teams taking guys like this. And players like this would probably be well acquitted were I ever to, like, run some sort of horrendous scouting department. So it's really an interesting pick and seems so apart from the Giants in general, and certainly what I had them attached to as this process has gone on. All right, so we get the Mets here. I'm going to say Jaron Kendall finally goes here. And then Baltimore 21, and then Toronto, who has two picks, one at 22 and one at 26, is in the hole. They're in the hole right now. As we wait for the Mets to get their pick in, let's sort of reevaluate where things are at on our boards, on the Cato board, on my board, and then look and answer a couple chat questions here as we do that. All right, so here's a question from John. This is a good question. What is the difference between raw power and game power? And maybe the more pertinent part of my question is, why would we care about raw power if there's a difference when it comes to game power? I'm with you to a degree. I do I do place significantly more weight on what I think a player's game power will be than their raw power. Scouts evaluate the raw power during batting practice, and it's important to evaluate it and note it because there might be a chance that player X can make a mechanical adjustment that or just through reps allows them to tap into their raw power in games more than it is doing currently. And that's kind of up to player development. But it's another interesting thing to evaluate. I know I've seen guys, Xavier Paul. I've seen Xavier Paul like tank upper deck shots during BP. He's got like 70 raw power, but it just doesn't play that way in games for one reason or another. And there are some guys for whom it doesn't play that way because of swing path. They might be able to torch balls out in BP, but they don't. The power utility doesn't function at that level in games because the swing path requires them to just pull the ball, and that's the only way they can get the ball in the air. And just because of the way they're pitched, they can't do that consistently. And then the other obvious one is just natural swing and miss. Guys who have huge raw power but swing and miss a ton, and just don't make enough contact to ever get to all that power. The William Opeñas of the world. So I do think it's important to evaluate both separately. John, I agree with you. I do think in my own personal evaluation that like the game power just weighs more heavily about the way I line the guys up. We got another question. I can find my mouse cursor somewhere. There it is. Okay, do you think Sam Carlson will be available for the Twins at pick 35? That's a good question. I don't think he should be, but he might be. I have heard the Twins attached to another Boris client at 35. Royce Lewis is a Boris client. For them attached to another one at 35, which seems to be a thing. Might give you a clue as to why Lewis went 1-1. There's a package deal involved here somehow. So there's that. Carlson might be available there, but I don't think he's the pick if he is, which I think is – and I know why you're getting at it, Eric, because Carlson's a Minnesota kid, and it'd be really neat if they got him. That'd be really, really neat, but I would not predict it at this point. All right, so I see the Mets, War Room. I see that their pick is in. All right, let's take a look at the boards here. I'm going to bring up Todd Zeal is the Mets draft representative, by the way, in case anyone's just watching us and not watching the stream. Okay, Manfred is announcing the pick.
Election of the 2017 MLB draft, the New York select David Peterson, a left-handed
Okay, so the Mets selected David Peterson, who I think is a steal. He was 6th on my overall board, which I'll show you guys in a second here. But Peterson, Chris, while I set up like some of the technological aspects of this so that we can communicate with our viewers, can you talk about how Cato views David Peterson? And I'll show Cato.
Yeah, sure thing. Cato has Peterson as the 3rd best pitcher in this class. Number 1 is Brendan McKay, and then number 2 was Griffin Canning, who's had some issues since then. So Peterson is definitely someone that Cato is a fan of. He wasn't all that great as a freshman and sophomore, but he broke out in a big way this year. He put up 140 strikeouts. He only walked 15 guys, so that's very good in that regard. And he also only allowed 2 home runs. So kind of looking at the peripherals for David Peterson, it's hard to do much better than that. The BABIP gods weren't necessarily with him, so he had an ERA in the mid-2s. But even so, there's a lot to like there. He's also very tall. He's listed at it's like 6'6". Cato's he loves the tall guys like that, so that's yet another point in his favor. So all things considered, he's he's very good. I guess the only knocks against him would be that he doesn't have a super long track record, not as long as some of the other pitchers who we've seen go so far. But if you're just looking at 2017 performance, like the most recent data, he's been off the charts.
All right, so Peterson with 6 on my board. And there was a question in the chat about why I had him so high when, like, clearly the industry and other publications are not as stoked about him as I am, and that's totally fine. Let's look at here's my board. Let's look at Peterson pitch-wise. And look at the way he lines up against some of the other guys in this class. This is just what I've heard from talking to Northwest area scouts about Peterson. Doesn't use his changeup very much, but when they see it, they love it and think that once it's used more heavily, it'll be a plus pitch. The above-average slider projection is I've been told it's conservative. And he only throws 88 to 92 and might touch a 4 now and then, but it's really heavy. And so the fastball plays above its velocity. Chris, you mentioned that he's big.
Yeah.
And he is. He's a legit 6'6". I've heard some people, like, they eyeball him and think that he's almost 6'8".
Wow.
And he's just a huge burly dude. But even at that size, he's throwing strikes at age 21, just about 22. And we're still waiting for Tyler Glasnow to do it. So the concerns about his size and his inability to throw strikes are a little unfounded for me because, like, he's already doing it. And I just think it's really impressive that he's already doing it at this size. And I think there might be – I've got above average command projected. I think there might be more than that. Like, if you believe lefties figure it out late, if you believe big pitchers figure it out late, then what's this guy's command going to look like when he figures it out when it's already fine? So I really like David Peterson. I think the Mets, this was a slam dunk. 21 Baltimore just selected DL Hall, a left-handed pitcher from Valdosta High School in Georgia. I've been saying Alabama incorrectly during this stream, so make fun of me for that if you so choose. Hall, I thought Hall was – I had him 10th on my board. Just prep lefties who throw this hard should go in the top 15. Always. They always should, especially when they can spin breaking balls like this. I think there's pretty comfortable plus curveball projection here for Hall. I don't think he's that different than Braxton Garrett was last year. It was a little easier to see Garrett's changeup was already kind of there on draft day, whereas Hall requires you to project on the delivery and the arm action, which is fine. But just lefties that throw, I don't know, 92, 94, touch a 6 with this sort of curveball, like, they should just always be top 15 picks. Always. I don't care what year it is. I don't care how scared teams are of high schoolers. There's DL Hall video in the chat now if you guys want to check it out. But I think this is a great pick for Baltimore. And I think is he immediately their top? I think he's immediately their top prospect. Chance Sisco is a 50 for me. Ryan Mountcastle is really hitting this year, but is ultimately probably a left fielder. Cedric Mullins is having a terrific year, but ultimately probably a 4th outfielder. And Sedlock and Keegan Aiken, their first 2 picks from last year's draft, are kind of struggling. Austin Hayes, their 3rd rounder out of the University of Jacksonville last year, is having a great season, but I've talked to scouts who are concerned about his approach. Might be a little too aggressive to be sustainable long term. So Hall, I've got a 50 on Hall. I just think I got a 50 on Sisco, who's their top guy on the offseason list. I think they just took the best guy in their system at 21 overall. So I think that's great for Baltimore. And I didn't think if you would have asked me a team whose pick I would have disliked the most after the night was over, I would have guessed it, maybe Baltimore at 21. But I love this. I think that's great. All right, let's take a look at who's left on the board here before Toronto gets their pick in. And Toronto's pick is going to be really interesting because, like I said, they pick again at 26. I've heard them with Nate Pearson here the right-handed pitcher from junior college in Florida, the guy who has been up to 102 in bullpen sessions recently. Peterson's gone. He was the top guy on my board, as is Hall. Same thing. Sam Carlson, the prep righty from Burnsville High School in Minnesota, is 14th on my board. This is a body beautiful 6'4" righty. Was 88 to 91 last summer. I still ranked him really high among the prep righties that I wrote up last summer. I think I want to say I ranked him either third or fourth after Green, Baz, and maybe one other guy. I had Carlson right after him, and just because he threw strikes on the showcase circuit, he had the body, he had the delivery, he could spin a breaking ball. There was some changeup field there. I just really liked all the components and was betting that the body would fill out, the velocity would come, and his strange cold weather pedigree would yield more in the way of skills than some of the other guys in this draft. And he's been up to 96 this spring. So some of that's happening. Kendall, I have Jaron Kendall at 16. He is still on the board. Logan Warmoth at 18 is still on the board as well. Bubba Thompson at 21. There was some underslot rumbling about him as high as 4 overall this morning. He is still available. Griffin Canning at 23. Maybe he would have dropped had I updated the board because of his medical issues. Berger is gone. Allen is still around. The slick fielding Southern California shortstop who is like maybe 5'5". There's Ramos. Tristan Beck, the Stanford righty, who didn't pitch this year because of a back issue, but objectively has starter stuff, and as a freshman looked like he's a draft-eligible sophomore, and last year as a freshman he looked like a potential top 10 pick. And then, as I said, Nate Peterson, who I've got here at 28, hellacious fastball. Not a great body, not a great delivery, mixed reviews on the secondary pitches, but people eventually think he'll tighten up some sort of breaking ball enough that he could be a lights-out bullpen piece, although it's hard to find anyone who thinks he might be able to start long-term. So he's an interesting pick. Yeah. Oh, speak of the devil. Okay. Commissioner Manfred is announcing our next pick.
Section of the 2017 MLB draft, the Toronto Blue Jays select Logan Warmoth, a shortstop.
Okay. So Toronto took Logan Warmoth, the shortstop from the University of North Carolina. This is a guy who's kind of divisive. I know some people who put him in up in the top 10 to 12 range on their board. And I think friend of the show, Keith Law, has him up that high on his personal board. And then there are some people who just aren't into it, who think, no thanks, I'll get my shortstop in Latin America. I'm not taking Levi Michael. No thanks. How do you feel about Logan Warmoth, Chris?
He's performed pretty well this year. He has an interesting combination of power and speed. He was in the double digits this year in both of those, which coming from a shortstop is pretty encouraging. He doesn't walk much. That's kind of a knock against him, but otherwise he looks pretty good. I think I have him as the 15th best hitter overall for Cato. So that's pretty solid. And it looks like, he hit well last year as a sophomore too. So he kind of has a bit of a track record of being someone who will hit for a pretty good average and have a little bit of power, a little bit of speed, and coming from a shortstop, that can be pretty encouraging.
Yeah, I saw Warmoth over several days at the ACC tournament, and he mashed. I do think that he did hit a ball hard the opposite way while I was there, but just looking at the swing, and scouts I've talked to have more or less confirmed this, there's like a pull-only nature to his style of hitting. But I think he could adjust. And I think he could have gone anywhere from 12 on down, and I would have been like, okay, that seems fine. And I think this is good value for Toronto here. I'm trying to think of how it might impact what they do at 26. And to me, it just feels like the best guy on their board type of pick. I don't think there's anything. I don't think they have any shenanigans in the works. Yeah. Yep. And Warmoth, it's interesting. Warmoth didn't start the year on like the first round radar, really. I think maybe there was talk about him going in like the sandwich rounds or the second round, but he just kept hitting and hitting and hitting. And then people were like, can he play shortstop? And everyone was kind of like, yeah. Especially with batted ball data now, like, yeah, he can play short. It's fine. It's not what I want out of my shortstop, but like, it's fine. And so, yeah, I think this is a really solid pick for Toronto. On the clock now at 23 is Los Angeles, the Dodgers. Okay. Bubba Thompson, the two-sport commit to the University of Alabama. He's committed to Alabama to play baseball and football. He's the guy who, like, I can't get away from hearing his name attached to the Dodgers. I was actively looking for other people to be attached to the Dodgers. And I suppose Jaron Kendall would be now too, because I know they had a lot of people at the SEC tournament, including scouting director Billy Gasparino. They were all at the SEC tournament. But the SEC tournament is full of like a lot of first-round talent every year. Clearly, we've seen a bunch of guys already go off the board from there. So then the question becomes, who were they looking at? And if it was Kendall, and if they liked what they saw, then maybe he's the pick here at 23 too. But I've just heard them attached to Bubba Thompson. The pick is already in, and Commissioner Manfred is set to announce.
The Los Angeles Dodgers select Jaron Kendall, an outfielder from Vanderbilt.
All right, so the Dodgers took Jaron Kendall. I think it's good value where they got him. Certainly there's volatility here because I'm not sure specifically what about it mechanically is abrasive, but it is sort of a strange swing. I'm typically good at being able to describe. It's easy. There's not effort to it. And I've seen him move the barrel around the zone. I've seen him go down and get breaking balls. I've seen him turn on good velocity up in the zone. So it's not a bat control thing. It might be a plate coverage thing. And his swing is definitely a little bit longer than you'd think a guy this size would have. But there's definitely something here that's causing him to swing and miss. And I think some teams were turned off by the fact that it wasn't easy to identify. So I'm not sure how correctable it is. I just know that the other tools are great. 7-runner, potential plus defender in center field. He's got above average to plus raw power. So if he ever does hit, we could be talking about a 5-tool guy. And so at 23, I think it's a great pick. But there's certainly some volatility here. Cliff Floyd, I'm watching right now, break down his swing a little bit and comping him to Jacoby Ellsbury. And I got to tell you, that's kind of interesting. So, Chris, I'm interested to hear what you have to say about Jaron Kendall and specifically how much you think how his contact rate compares to the rest of the class and what you think that did to his standing on Cato.
His contact rate is not good. His strikeout rate was up around 25%, which is very high for someone who's supposed to be an elite college hitter. Most of the guys who we've seen go already have been around the 10 to 15% range. So that's a big red flag against him. But even so, Cato's not totally out on him. It had him right ahead of Logan Warmoth, who went last time, as he's the 14th hitter overall for Cato. And the thing is that even though he strikes out so much, he still has hit for power. He's done a lot of damage on the bases, and he's been a good hitter pretty much since he set foot on Vanderbilt. This year was actually a tick down from what he did last year as a sophomore. So I think the strikeouts are a big red flag, and that's the reason why he's not one of Cato's favorite hitters, but it's kind of outweighed by everything else that he does well, which is hit for power, steal bases, just hit for a high average.
All right. How much? What is his contact rate like? How does it measure up to the average contact rate in the class? Do you know sort of generally where like the average college draft eligible players' contact rate sort of falls?
I know that the top guys are generally between 10 and 15%.
Okay, as far as strikeout rates go?
Yeah, for strikeout rate. I think the averages would obviously be a little bit higher than that, but I don't think a lot higher than that. It's pretty rare to see a guy who is up at 25%, like Kendall is, go this early, or even show up on my Cato rankings, because Cato puts a big premium on strikeout rate. It's just Kendall is such a weird case where he does everything else and he still manages to put up a solid stat line even with the crazy strikeouts.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, coming into the season, when I went to go see Vanderbilt at San Diego, which I've posted the video I took of Kendall during that time in the chat, I went to see him. Kyle Wright was like a nice bonus, but I went to go see 3 games of Jaron Kendall. And like Riley Adams was a nice bonus too. But I thought Kendall coming into the year had a chance to go in the top 5. Pretty good chance. Some of the more forward-thinking teams I've spoken to about the way they evaluate college players, because it's rare to find college players with a tool set like Kendall has. And, of course, he was more or less unsignable as a high schooler, which is how guys like that get to college a lot of the time. But the separator for a lot of teams for college center fielders is power. We care whether or not you have power, because if college center fielders don't have it, they typically turn into bench outfielders at best. And Kendall certainly had that. And so I thought that even though there was swing and miss there, that he'd still end up going pretty good. Now, if we assume, did he still, would you say, Chris, get to a considerable amount of his power this year?
Yeah, I mean, he had 15 homers this year, and the fact that he's been able to do that with that strikeout rate is pretty impressive, I think. I think it's worth noting that the strikeout rate has been going up. He struck out 60 times as a freshman and 62 as a sophomore, 74 this year. So I don't know if that's something worth reading into. Maybe he's trending backwards in some area or something like that. But
all right,
to this point, he's been able to make it work at the college level. It's just a matter of whether it will work against it when he goes professional and starts facing better pitching, who will be better at exploiting the holes he has in his swing.
All right, I want to talk more about Jaron Kendall, but Commissioner Manfred has announced that the Red Sox took Missouri right-handed pitcher Tanner Houck with 24th pick overall. I mocked former Houston left-handed pitcher Seth Romero to Boston in my final mock draft because they took a chance on a kid with makeup issues last year with Jason Grumman. Off-field issues, excuse me. And Romero certainly has those. Okay, so we'll talk about Tanner Houck in a minute. But let's examine this Jaron Kendall thing for a second longer. All right, so let's assume that he never solves his contact issues, but also assume that despite them, he's able to continue tapping into his power. And he hit 15 home runs this year in a shorter college season. So let's say that with wood bats, but over a longer pro season, he's an 18 home run guy or thereabouts. Okay. And slugs was average slugging for Major League Baseball in general is what, like 400 even. So if we look at center fielders, and I'm just at the FanGraphs leaderboard page right now and just saw that Aaron Judge has 21 home runs, and my brain is going to explode. There were people, by the way, if some of you are in this chat, you never have to apologize to me for this. It is totally okay. Like, you're going to be wrong about players. We're all going to be wrong about players. But there are people in the comment section on my top 100 who were furious that Aaron Judge was on it. At all. He's got 21 home runs. Okay. All right, so I'm looking at center fielders, right? And if I'm looking at some center fielders here who hit for power but swing and miss a lot, I'm looking at George Springer. Okay, I'm looking at there just really aren't a whole lot of guys who are doing it like this year. McCutcheon doesn't swing and miss a whole lot. Buxton doesn't hit for power. I guess Curtis Granderson historically, maybe not this season, but he's a guy like that. Keon Broxton would be like an extreme version of this, right? So if you look at these guys and try to figure out how much do they have to hit? Okay, that's the question we want to answer. If we assume Jaron Kettle's going to get to some of his power and be a good defensive center fielder, how much does he have to hit to be a valuable big leaguer? So if I'm looking at, I don't know, all right, let's say George Springer. Springer's got 17 home runs already this year. I think he hits for more power than Kendall will hit for at peak. But let's just, like, he's striking out at a 24% clip. He's walking at an 8% clip. I think if Kendall can get to either of those and play defense on par with what George Springer is doing right now, then we can sort of just back out some of the power and see what kind of player Jaron Kendall might be. Okay, so Springer's already at two. He's already at 2 wins above replacement this season, and he's got 17 home runs. He's slugging .536. So if we back out some of that power, let's say it's like half that as far as the home runs are concerned. Maybe you slice the slugging down to like 435, 450, somewhere in that range. Feels like pretty reasonable for Kendall slugging. I still think you're looking at a guy who is like a 2-win player. And that's all you can ask for in the back of the first round. So I think he's great value for where he was selected. I think it was a good pick for the Dodgers, who they destroyed last year's draft too. All right, so Tanner Houck went, and then Seth Romero just went to Washington at 25 overall. Let's talk about Tanner Houck. Missouri right-hander Tanner Houck has it's a unique cross-body delivery. He's a huge physical guy, like 6'5", 235, 240, throws hard. His velocity has, ebbed and flowed this year a little bit, but there's a plus slider in there too, and he's had starts where he's commanded the slider in such a way that scouts think he might be able to locate it consistently enough to get left-handed hitters out with back foot sliders, even if he never has better than a fringe average changeup. So that's the argument for Houck. Obviously, there are other people who see the cross-body delivery and don't think he can start, either because they don't like the delivery from a health perspective or they don't like it from a platoon splits perspective and think that Houck will end up in the bullpen. Romero was kicked off the Houston baseball team. What sort of rumors have I heard about this kid? Bongs have been involved, okay? And, I don't care about that as much or at all, to be honest with you, because we can have a long discussion about a Bill Hicks vibey discussion about marijuana on here if we really wanted to. But he also has been in fights with teammates, and there have been several infractions. He's a habitual line stepper, okay? But talent-wise, he's probably a top 15 or 20 talent. Mid-90s fastball, some violence in the arm action, but it is certainly inarguably explosive. Plus slider right now. If you like the arm action, and I do, for changeup projection, it's in there. So it's like a mid-rotation starter repertoire, but the off-field stuff is bad. So that's why Seth Romero fell to Washington. Did you have enough of a sample with Romero to get a Cato vibe, Chris, or has he not pitched because of suspension so frequently that it sort of muddied his projection?
I do have a projection for him. I think it's probably not all that useful just because of how little he's pitched. Let me see where I have him. Yeah, he's actually pretty decent. He's right behind Alex Vallejo. His strikeout numbers have been really good. But I think Cato's a little conservative with him just because we don't have a huge sample to go off of this year. But he's been good in the past. Looking at what he did in the past years, he was really good. So I think there's a lot to like there in terms of performance. It's just a little hard to get a firm grasp because he's been limited in terms of how many innings he's thrown this year.
All right. What about Houck?
Cato really likes Houck. He was the only pitchers left ahead of him are Canning and Heimlich, who have their own issues that cause him to fall down the draft board. But Houck, his 2017 performance hasn't been that spectacular, especially in the strikeout department. He's just been kind of okay there. But he has a strong body of work at Missouri. He's been good every year he's played there. So you kind of put everything together. It's a good profile. He's also on the tall side, 6'5". That's something Cato likes. And he's also on the young side. He's hasn't turned 21 yet. So even though the performance, at least the recent performance, has been just kind of mediocre, he still looks like a promising player.
All right, interesting. Yeah, Hauk is another guy who is harder to scout because the way he does the things he does is unique to him. All right, so let's take a look at some chat questions here while we still have some time on MLB Network before the Rangers turn their pick in. All right. I'm backtracking a little bit because I want to get to as many questions as we can. Spicy Boy asks, why are Dan O'Dowd's eyes so dreamy? And the answer is that's why he was hired. But splicing, have you ever seen the Batman Begins episode where they do, or not the Batman Beyond episode or is it, yeah, where they do splicing and then make, like, they cross people's genes with like animal genes and stuff. O'Dowd had that done. So that's that. Momus asks, do you think Canning and his high mileage arm will be available at pick 28? And might the Jays take a high risk guy like that paired with a lower risk one at 22? That's an interesting thought. I've kind of had Toronto connected with Nate Pearson, but I think that's an interesting possibility. Yes, that is a way to acquire value and mitigate risk in a way that doesn't involve high school players. I'm going to try to answer these on the chat as well. So if you hear silence and me typing or whatever, then that's me doing that. All right. Is Seth Romero the other Boris guy that the Twins were linked to? No. I actually don't even know if he's with Boris. Thank you to Person for pointing out my typo in the lower third bar. I probably should have caught that at some point in the last, I don't know, how long has it been? How long have we been sitting here?
A while.
Almost 3 hours?
Oh my God, almost 3 hours.
All right.
It's 9:45. Wow.
It doesn't feel like that. I am starting to perspire.
Yeah, same here.
Well, you should refresh your beverage if you feel the need. I'm drinking a Kroger Blackberry Citrus Seltzer.
Oh.
And just a plain water in a Zelda glass that was not dishwasher safe. These used to turn red. The heart pieces used to turn red when the water was cold.
Now they don't. They stay white now?
Yeah. Looking through, here's a question from Anthony. Looking through the video and scouting reports, everything seems average or better for Drew Waters. Any reason why he doesn't get more run? Just lack of an impact tool? Yeah, Anthony, I think that's probably part of it. The Rangers have just picked Bubba Thompson, and we'll address that in a second. Some of it, I think, is he might get paid a little bit more. I think the Braves, he's a target for the Braves with one of their second or third picks. So he might be falling due to perceived signability. And that might be why he's still around. And also, a lot of the high school outfielders just sort of have been evaluated very similarly. And so the difference between team to team might have a guy number one among those high school outfielders that other teams have like fifth or sixth. But there's very little difference in talent, but just the way they're going to come off the board might look like there is. And so perhaps Waters is being impacted by something like that as well. But I do think he's someone the Braves are targeting with one of their next few picks. Let's see. All right, so Texas took Bubba Thompson. Bubba Thompson, two-sport athlete, committed to the University of Alabama, plus runner, who when we all saw him last summer, and that's the video you'll get, it's from last summer, was weak with the bat. But he's starting to control the barrel more this spring, and so teams felt a lot better as the spring went on about his future hit tool. and became very intrigued by what other sort of developmental strides he might start taking. They were kind of into getting him on the ground floor here as he developed, rather than letting him go to school, look great for 3 years at Alabama, and then commanding, $5+ million. So there's that. That's part of it too. I like Bubba Thompson. He's absolutely type of pick the Rangers make, especially with 2 late picks here. I think they pick again at 28. So yeah, this is a like Texas Rangers pick. I had Mark Vientos mocked here because he also is very much a sort of projectable athlete sort of pick. Vientos, I think, now might fall to the Braves as well. Yeah. Oh, I just heard Harold Reynolds say that someone was a baseball player, so everyone drink. He said it again. Everyone drink again. Sean asks, have you ever written about how organizations handle prospects? Are there notable philosophical differences, or is it largely prospect by prospect? It'd be interesting to hear about how teams handle placement and development for their own farm systems. Yes, teams definitely do handle kids differently. Some of it is just about the freedom that they allow their prospects to have in the taking the wheel to their own development. Some organizations are proactive about things like weighted ball training, and others are actively against it, and others let you do whatever the hell has worked for you that has made you a prospect in the first place. Some teams provide players with a social infrastructure that is better than other teams, that allows them to handle money or handle not having money in ways that are more effective than other teams do. And I think it's an investment to do that. You're hiring personnel, especially at the complex level, to teach English, financial skills, assimilation skills. And that costs money and doesn't yield as much return on the field as it costs. But it definitely allows your Latin American players who suddenly have $1 million a better chance than they'd have if you were just handing them $1 million and saying go. Team to team, yeah, it'd be an interesting thing to break down. But but player development philosophies and personnel are constantly in motion, like any other position in the baseball industry, and so it's hard to really nail down to the core of all 30 teams' developmental strategies at any given time, because they're all constantly in flux or new and have very little track record. But there definitely are differences. And yeah, I notice them, and I'll stop short of naming names as far as teams are concerned, because it's not always good. There are teams, maybe you could dig back and find, I've either written about it or talked about it at times, like Seattle prospects, they all get fat. Just the last half decade of Mariners prospects put on a lot of weight really quickly. And it's either because they're targeting players with that body type, or they're not on good conditioning programs. I've talked to scouts who say there's a lot of and not anymore because they've had obviously front office turnover recently. But I've talked to a lot of people who are just there's a lot of standing around at Mariners camp, Eric. And not anymore, again. But I'm receiving texts from my wife. She sent me a picture of a chair that looks like it was made for a giant person at a grocery store. It costs $50. It's huge. It is huge. I'll upload a picture of it at some point here. Have we had anybody else go other than Thompson? The Cubs pick is in. Who's all in their war room? Oh, I couldn't see. Bummer. All right, Commissioner Manfred is announcing the Cubs selection.
Draft. The Chicago Cubs select Brendan Little, a left-handed pitcher from the State College of Florida, Manatee, Sarasota, in Bradenton, Florida.
All right. Brendan Little, junior college lefty from Florida, was originally at the University of North Carolina, but they just didn't have innings for this kid. There's some relief risk here, but there's also plus arm strength and a potential plus breaking ball. So these guys are hard to find. He's a Philly area kid. He's from Malvern, Pennsylvania, which is like who went to Malvern Prep? Malvern Prep is like a big deal in Philadelphia. I said, while rolling my eyes. But like, they talk about it like, oh yeah, you go to Malvern Prep in Philly. Yeah, I know about Malvern Prep. That's how they say it. So there's like some late blooming projection on the command because it's a Northeastern kid who didn't have a lot of innings in college at UNC. So like he hasn't had the reps to sort of harness that command. So what scouts are worried about with him can be explained away as far as the relief risk is concerned. So yeah, I think he's a pretty interesting pick at this point. I had him a little lower because I just kept hearing the relief risk thing from teams. But I think that there's some interesting like late coming projection here with Little. And if you want to read like the best case scenario for Little, like go find whatever Keith Law wrote. Keith saw like the best start the kid has ever had. And so like that's, if you want a picture of what he might be, if everything works out, like it's what he was that day. Do you, have you ever done any work with junior college stuff, Chris?
I have not. That's it's kind of the next frontier for me.
That'd be pretty interesting.
Yeah, I think that'd be cool to look at.
Certainly, it's like the competitive environments are more bizarre because like now you're looking at what Willie Calhoun did at Yavapai and trying to figure out what the hell to do with that. But Cato doesn't know that Willie Calhoun's college, like from like down the line was 310, both directions.
Right.
And that they play at like an altitude at Yavapai up in Prescott, Arizona. And that when it rains up there, the drainage at Yavapai's field is so bad that they go play their games at a high school field, which is even smaller.
Wow.
And like, yeah. So like,
even with they'll never account for all that. That's just unquantifiable. So yeah, I don't know. I haven't even tried to dig up junior college data at all. So I don't even know if would be worth the time and effort to do so, but that's something I'll look into because obviously a lot of guys come from there once you get past like the middle of the first round. So it'd be interesting to see how these guys kind of project statistically.
We might, if you start acquiring enough data, looking back at other prospects from those schools, perhaps you could tailor them a little bit. But yeah, I can imagine it would take an insane amount of work. Hurtado wants to know if we think Keston Hura has an underslot deal at 9 due to his injury to set up somebody else at 34. I think that's an interesting theory, but I think there was enough buzz about Hura going in that range anyway that if there's an underslot deal, then it's probably pretty small. I do think that Milwaukee is interested in Georgia high school catcher Luis Campusano Bracero with their second pick, though. Kevin Black is asking, do you think Blaine Enlow, prep righty, makes it out of the comp competitive balance picks? The answer is no. I've been told by people that they don't like him. Ironically, it's always from teams who pick in like the 30s and early 40s. That's another elite curveball spin rate guy among the prep ranks in this class. Again, go check out the sortable board if you want to sort by Take a look at the high school arms spin rates. Enlo's curveball spin rate is like up in the 2,800 range. So I think Adel is definitely one of these. He, along with Sam Carlson, are like those prep righties who I think teams are going to gobble up here as we get to their second picks. Dodgers get a steal with Kendall. This is from Chaz, who I just assume is kind of a bro based on having the name Chaz. Dodgers get a steal with Kendall. Think they thought they would have had a chance to get him? Yeah, probably more than I did, based on the heat they had at the SEC tournament. Yeah. All right, and here's the Blue Jays, and they've taken Nate Peterson, another junior college arm from Florida, who they had sort of been attached to before this. Did I have them mocked with Peterson? I might have, but at 26, it still counts. Nate Peterson throws really hard, up to 102 in bullpen recently. Flash a plus slider, hasn't been consistent, not a great body, probably more relief risk about the body and the delivery than there is with someone like Brandon Little. But at the back of the first round, we're going to start having guys who have issues. This is just when if they didn't have them, they'd be top 10 picks, and it's okay. And lots of guys overcome it. It's just a developmental hurdle that Pearson has to clear, is his command and secondary pitch consistency. All right, some more questions here as we go. Resume Man, I assume it's Resume and not Resume. Resume Man asks, if Luis Robert were drafted instead of being an international free agent, where would you rank him in this class? And the answer is somewhere in that 3 to 5 range. Or I guess with Robert, there would have been 3 to 6. He's a 55 future value for me. And I had Green and Wright as 60s. And then Lewis, McKay, and Gore as 55s. And that's where Robert would have been, somewhere in that tier. All right. Strohs is asking, so far, what's your favorite pick? What do you think the best value pick was? And what was the highest upside pick so far? That's a good question. The best value pick might be Wright at number 5 for me. I think that was certainly a terrific pick. Angels getting Adel at 10 is what they really wanted to happen. And I feel good that they got what they wanted. But I don't know if that's the highest upside pick. Shane Baz at 12, I think, is pretty good value considering how good his stuff is. Obviously, I think the David Peterson pick at 20 is monster value. So that's probably the one that has the most value.
Yeah, I was going to say that too. David Peterson. He's Cato likes him as well. And the fact that he fell all the way down to number 20, I think that's really good value right there.
The Rangers have made their second selection. It's Christopher Cease, a shortstop from West Orange High School in Florida. Cease is pretty interesting. Most scouts think he's going to stay at shortstop. He's got a big, projectable body, but it's not so big that you're worried for certain that he's going to have to move to third base, although there are scouts who think he will. And then, obviously, if he does, then it probably means he's grown into the kind of raw power that's needed to profile there anyway. So this is just one of those sort of physical projection. It looks right. He's a good baseball player picks, or late first-round picks that are very – it's a very Rangers pick. And you just sort of let things – development take hold. If he grows into power, great. You worry about it when it happens. If not, he stays at shortstop. And there's not as much pressure on him to hit. I had him down at let's see. I don't think this is a bad pick, but I had him down at 57 overall on my board. I have a 40 future value on him. So basically, the way he was picked in this range probably means that the Rangers have essentially a 45 on him. They probably think his ceiling is like a 50, 55 maybe, but it's high risk because it's a high schooler. It's a high schooler who might move off of a premium position. So yeah, there's like probably half grade difference between where I have Cease evaluated and where the Rangers have him, even though there's a 20 slot difference between where he's picked and where I have him on my board. It's really not that huge of a gap. What were we talking about? I think my shadow's growing in already. It's a long day.
Yeah.
What other fun things can we do with like the Google Hangouts? The chat's been good. Keep the chat questions coming, everybody. We'll try to fire off more of those. We've been hitting those more as this goes. Favorite pick, Secura and White.
Who would you say has been your least favorite pick?
Smith, Pavin Smith.
Yeah, I was thinking that too. That was very early for Pavin Smith, I thought. Just for someone who's a first baseman, not great power.
Yeah, I don't know. Darren asks, who has the highest probability of developing into a hitter that slots into the top half of a major league batting order? Either pick between Corey Ray or Keston Hiura. For me, that's Ray. Not only because of the speed component of it, and I know, it's like old baseball hat to think about speed as a top of the lineup prerequisite. But his approach, Corey Ray, when I saw him here during spring training, took the best at-bats of any prospect I saw. Every at-bat, 5-6 pitches, grind it out, make pitchers work for strikes, get yourself into favorable counts, and hack. And I think that skill, more so than Ray's speed, is why he'll be hitting at the top of the lineup. Not because he can fly, although he can. Okay. Oh, Strohs, who asked the question about like our favorite picks and the best value picks, wants to specify that it was about picks after the first round. Okay, so yeah, we're at that spot now where we can start talking about guys who we like now that like in the second and third round or in like comp rounds and stuff. So is there anybody that you've identified with Cato that you think are outstanding values here?
Brent Rooker is one guy. He's his numbers this year have been off the charts. He hit almost 400. He got on base almost half the time. He has power. He has speed. I guess the knocks against him are that he's a senior and that he doesn't have a long track record. But I think if you're looking at performance-wise, he's kind of the obvious choice at this point. Let's see, on the pitching side, who do we got? Griffin Canning is a name. Let's see. Next guy I have is Brian Howard, but I don't think he's quite up that high in anyone's list. But I think I think Brent Rooker's the guy. I think he was supposed to go around now, wasn't he? He was.
Yeah, Rooker's stock has been hard to peg, right? For those of you who don't know who we're talking about Mississippi State first baseman Brent Rooker, who after going the 38th round last year as a redshirt sophomore, just destroyed the SEC this year. So there's questions about where he's going to go. And I think that we're starting to get to the range where his name is going to be talked about. The Cubs just took LSU righty Alex Lang. Lang's velo has been down since his freshman year at LSU, when he was like mid-90s pretty consistently, but it's still a 70 curveball. And he locates it. So there's people who think he's a reliever, but if he locates that curveball consistently enough, there's a chance he starts. And if not, you're looking at a reliever with like a dominant bat missing pitch. And for the Cubs, that's just fine. That's just fine. I'm going to try to get this. Yeah, Rooker's really interesting. And Sestouli just texted me. to talk about. Try to convince me to talk about Rooker as like the guy. But of course, I'm going to talk about high school kids that I like. It's not my style to talk. I mean, it's great. Like the college performer is great. Like, we'll talk about them. They're good. It's great. Tristan Beck, I think, is great value here. I know that the back fracture concerns people, but I really like him. Either of the prep arms left, Blaine Enlow and Sam Carlson. I think either of them is great value here. I do like Drew Waters. I think we're going to see Brady McConnell come off the board here, but I'm not a huge fan of his. And then Michael Mercado, the like wispy, like he looks like, you know, the things that you see out in front of the used car dealerships, the guys like the noodle men. That's what Michael Mercado looks like. He sort of kind of has a Tristan McKenzie vibe about his physical projection. He's got a pretty firm Stanford commit, but if he goes off the board soon, I think there's a chance he signs, and he's really interesting. Did anything happen that I missed on the draft here? I got a lot of windows open, yo.
I do too.
Johnny Mandel was talking. All right, so yeah, the Cubs took Lang, and we're into comp round A with Tampa on the clock. At some point, we're going to stop the stream like before. We're not going to go through all the picks tonight. It'll probably be at the end of comp round A because I have to write stuff for tomorrow and like eat.
Yeah. I feel like people will stop watching at a certain point too.
Yeah, probably. We still have 281 people in here.
All right, that's solid.
Yeah, I think that's pretty good. Let's look at some more questions here. Okay, so yeah, guys, we pretty much answered the dudes who we like coming on here. So we have Beck, Rooker, Carlson, Enlow, Canning.
Where do you think KJ Harris then? Do you think he's in the picture yet?
I don't think so, not yet. I don't think enough important eyes were on him while he's caught.
Yeah.
For someone to take him this early. I think if you take whoever takes KJ Harrison, who was a high school catcher. KJ Harrison on FanGraphs we've talked about him a lot. When Kylie McDaniel was the lead prospect analyst and I was writing underneath him, we podcasted about KJ Harrison because he was a freshman who was destroying the Pac-12, but he was playing first base in deference to Logan Ice. And so the question was, if this guy moves back to catcher and keeps hitting like this, is he like a top 5 pick? But he never really moved back to catcher. And then his performance was kind of down his sophomore and junior years. So there's definitely plus raw power there. He's caught a few times this season. Scouts who have seen him do it have an advantage because they've gotten to turn him in, evaluated as a catcher. But not every org has been able to do that. So I think it's an interesting situation that I think in part at least is going to be dictated by whether or not, depending on who saw him catch and when. Obviously, if you watched him catch Luke Heimlich, who, when you set your glove up, he hits it and his stuff isn't all that nasty, it might look different than KJ Harrison catching a guy who throws in the mid-90s and is wild. So that's kind of an interesting component to it, too. It's a weird draft. Weird draft. I'm trying to get this photo uploaded to the chat so you guys can see this giant chair.
How about Drew Ellis? He's another Cato guy who's still on the board.
Drew Ellis is like the corner infielder from Louisville who plays first base when McKay is pitching and plays third base when McKay is playing first base. I have Ellis evaluated over as a first baseman. I don't think he's good enough defensively to play third. Like McKay, the ease of the power, the extension through contact, it almost looks like he looks like Brendan McKay. It's comfortably plus raw power. But again, now we're talking about a first baseman, a college first baseman, and also a right college first baseman. And unless you're Eric Karros or Paul Goldschmidt, you don't make it as a right college first baseman.
Makes
All right,
sense,
here's
yeah.
Tampa's 31st overall pick.
Selection of the 2017 MLB draft. Tampa Bay Rays.
Okay, so an Oregon State player is off the board here at 31. Drew Rasmussen. who has come back late this spring after recovering from Tommy John. He threw a perfect game last year, his freshman year. It's like 92, 94 will touch a 6. Some scouts think there's a plus slider in there. I've seen him and have like a future 50 on the slider. There's some deception. He's more of a reliever for me. I think there's definitely a spin rate component to this too. I don't have hard data for Rasmussen, but I've heard it's good, which might play into a role into Tampa Bay. Oregon State is a program that uses weighted ball training for their pitchers. Tampa is proactively involved in using that for their pitchers as well. So there were just a lot of things that lined up for this pick. And obviously, with Rasmussen having a Tommy John, there's some concern. He's already got one under his belt. But there's also the people who say that my concern about him as a future reliever is let's let this guy pitch more before we say stuff like that. So it's an interesting pick. 32 here. Cincinnati is up with their comp round pick. I expect them to come fast and furious here for the comp round, and then we'll get going. Oh, someone wants to know what happened to Keith. ESPN just wouldn't let him do it, dog. Sorry. Keith wanted to do it. We set it up. Like, we did a lot of work to try to prep for him to do it. But I'm glad we had Chris here. But just ESPN was just not having it, which I suppose is their right to do. But I'm not pleased, obviously. I did a lot of work to try to help Keith, get things set up with Keith. Other questions going on. After some initial skepticism, White Sox fandom has allowed me to buy into the Berger pick. Well done, ... Very funny, Andy. Take that stuff to the BP chats. No puns in my chats. Okay, Cincinnati has taken Jeter. His first name is Jeter Downs from Pace High School in Florida. This kid homered twice at area code games. He's got really unique, quick, twitchy hitting hands. Not a shortstop for me. Some people think he might stay over there. It's more second base for me. I've got concerns about the athleticism and the arm strength. But he might hit enough to profile at second base anyway. So I like this pick. I think it's totally solid. Other questions here. Does the draft have a pace of play issue? No, this is just how things shake out, Ricky. I think it's good to steep yourself in, silence once in a while.
It's only once a year, so I think we can suck it up and just take a while between picks.
Gus wants to know if the injured college pitchers are going to sign for over slot. Yeah, I think one or two of them will, yeah. I think Canning and certainly Beck. I think Beck almost certainly will. And Canning at this point, don't you threaten to go back to school if you're him? We were talking about that kid going 10 3 days ago. I don't know the specifics of the medical, but it must be bad. Comp round pick number 3 is in. Oakland. Kevin Merrill. Whoa, this is a weird one. Okay. I'm gonna link to video. I haven't done this yet tonight, but I'm gonna link the video in the chat that's not ours because I don't have any of Kevin Merrill. Kevin Merrill is like a slasher. 70 or 80 runner who is like a slash and dash guy who plays shortstop at the University of South Florida right now. But I don't think he can stay there. So I'm going to link you some video. It's weird. It's weird. It just doesn't look like your typical big leaguer, but he's definitely got big league tools. And most scouts think if he doesn't play shortstop or second base, that he'd be really good in center field. Chris, I know Cato loves him. Talk about him.
Yeah, Cato's a big fan. He's one of the top hitters that was left on the board. His performance at South Florida has been really good. This past year, he hit 384, a 464 on base percentage. He's someone who makes a ton of contact. He steals bases, and he also plays shortstop, which is obviously a point in his favor. You don't find that many guys who can hit this well while also playing shortstop and also showing that they can do a lot of damage on the bases. So that, along with the fact that he's been doing this for a while now, it's not like he's just kind of popped up out of nowhere. He's shown that he can consistently put forth this type of performance. So Cato's really on board with this one.
All right, next pick is in. Milwaukee at 34. Tristan Lutz, high school outfielder from Texas. Lutz is like solid across the board tools. Nothing's plus. I think there's some people who think that his raw power eventually might get there. Doesn't use his lower half well enough in games for me to project that sort of raw power to play in games. But I do think there's interesting ability to hit here. And I've been watching Beck since he was a rising junior. So yeah, like the summer after his sophomore year. And I like him. It's probably right field based on like the arm strength and stuff. I don't have him projected in center, but I think some teams do. So we've got Miami here picking at 36. It will end comp round A, and then we will start the second round. And I'll hang around, Chris, if you want to go. I might need a break. Are they going to take a break after 36?
I feel like they usually do, at least a short break.
I could use like 5 minutes. I could use 5 minutes to get something in my stomach. But
I'll stick around. Yeah.
Well, we might stick around and might talk about stuff in general. And as the picks come in, we'll talk about them. But like, we'll take more questions. We'll focus on questions. I'll tweet a link again so that we can try to refresh the bodies that we have in the chat. 260 of you are still here. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. But we'll try to fill it again, and then we'll take a good hard look at the board and see who's left that we have ranked high on Cato and on the scout board. And like see who's left.
Oh,
all right,
there he is.
Minnesota just took Rooker. All right, so I expect Rooker to be underslot at 35, and I think Minnesota will be taking Brady McConnell at 37, shortstop from Florida, who is also a Boris guy. That's the Boris guy. But I don't know. Yeah, so, I mean, just watching the highlights of Rooker, it's like this guy clearly has insane raw power. Scouts think that it's at least plus raw power. Like I said before, talking to sources who have him in the top 2 or 3 guys as far as exit velocities go in the draft, someone told me that he's popped a 117 exit velo at one time this year.
Wow.
It's just you're talking about a bad defensive first baseman who hits right.
He has any chance in the outfield? I see he stole 18 bases this year, so do you think he's can run well enough to pass him left, or is he first base?
I think that you should try it.
Right. It makes sense.
Brendan wants to know, do college pitchers still in season take out any sort of insurance to protect themselves if they were to blow out their arms in the next week? Adel closing out the game for Florida right now made me think of that. And yes, Brendan, there are definitely some college prospects who have insurance. As far as refusing to pitch, college baseball culture is not in a place where I could see this happening. All right, some other questions. Where was Oregon State lefty Luke Heimlich projected to go? Of course, if you haven't heard, Luke Heimlich, who I had ranked at 41 on my board, the Oregonian had a story about sexual misconduct on Heimlich's part when he was a teenager. So it's a complex issue. Most teams have him off their board. Obviously, the issue for me, I removed him from mine. I take that sort of thing very seriously. But at the same time, I understand that there are people who are saying the kid was 15 and made a horrible mistake. And like, let's give him a chance to redeem himself. So I get that too. Pick 36 to Miami is North Carolina center fielder Brian Miller. Chris, talk about Miller and how he projects for you, because I was kind of lukewarm on him after I saw him a couple weeks ago.
Let's see, Brian Miller. Okay. Cato it's all right. He's all right. I think he's the 22nd hitter I have listed here. He looks like he has very good speed. He hit pretty well this year, 343 batting average. He hasn't really shown a lot of power to this point, and he hasn't drawn walks either. So that kind of there's kind of some knocks against him. But at the same time, he's been one of the best hitters in the SCC or the ACC. So he's been in the top conference. He's performed. He's stolen bases, and he did this year and last year as well. So it's an interesting guy. It's not someone that Cato loves, but it's also Cato does see the intrigue there.
All right, interesting. I thought his swing was long at times when I saw him, and others it was great. He squared up balls at times and was late on what I thought were hittable pitches at others. He's fine in center field. I clearly preferred Hazley to Miller by the end of the week after watching the two of them, track down balls. But I think he could be a 50 defender in center field. And, I think there's a sort of a tweener vibe about Miller, but I think there's a chance that he's like a low-end everyday player. What is your theory on why teams are taking high school pitchers over college this year? Are they, though? Are they? I think that there's still high school pitchers left on the board that are more talented than some of the college guys we've seen come off the board. Canning's issue has been medical. But no, I guess you're right. Like with guys like Rodgers and stuff, I think it's kind of a 50-50 split, to be honest with you. I mean, there's an objective answer to whether or not it is, but it doesn't feel excessive to me. Sorry, my posture's been changing because I have shitty posture. Let me go back to the chat queue. LOL at FanGraphs. Yeah, it said FanGraphs for a long time. It was going to be perfect. Hey, thanks. There are a lot of well-wishers in the chat, and thank you guys for saying so. Anytime you do any pardon me. Kroger's not paying me, but they're solid value. Like, I know the La Croix are really good. The Peach Pear La Croix is a 70 seltzer. But, like, we're just on the margins right now because we want to go to Seattle for vacation. But thanks to those of you who are wishing Chris and I well in the chat. In general, Chris, they're just saying that we're doing a good job. And
awesome.
They appreciate our time and information. No question. Just want you guys to say you guys have been awesome, and this is infinitely better than watching the MLB Network broadcast. Thanks again for all you do. We appreciate that. Like, the guys that do the MLB broadcast, like Jim Callis is a friend of mine and like a mentor, and he's like the Johnny Carson of prospect writing. And I'm sure John, like that John, Manuel, and Jim are doing an excellent job. But yeah, like, I think that our little hole in the wall stream is going pretty well. And honestly, we've had internet issues here at my house the last couple of days, and I had a guy come take a look at it yesterday, and he told me it was fixed. And like during the day today, it was clear that it was not. And so I was worried about this being a horrible disaster, and it's turned out pretty good. Yeah. And I'd like to spice it up at some point with more production value, stuff like this. But I think it's gone well. What are your thoughts on Morgan Cooper? Chris, what are your thoughts on Texas right-handed pitcher Morgan Cooper?
Morgan Cooper. Let me see. I'm moving back and forth because my laptop battery is dying out on me here. Let's see. Cooper.
That's okay. We should probably stop soon.
Okay.
Or at least
I have him 27th overall on Cato's list. It doesn't look like he's really on anybody's wasn't on BA's top 100. You didn't say anything about it either. So
yeah, I had ended up throwing him on towards the end. Morgan Cooper is a Texas righty who has had injury issues since high school. He throws hard. There's downhill plane. If you want to put a 55 on the slider, I'm with you. I think that on stuff, there's an argument for him to go in like the first two rounds. There are just questions about health. And if you're lining him up against the other pitchers, college pitchers, for whom there are questions about health, he's behind Beck, he's behind Canning. And so I would expect those two guys to come off the board before we heard Morgan Cooper's name.
Yeah, it looks like he performed really well this year at Texas. Had lots of strikeouts this past year. Kept the ball in the park pretty well. I think the thing is that he's a senior, so he's a little on the old side. So even though his stats
again,
it's
injuries.
Yeah, that's kind of a knock against him. But he's one of those tall guys. He's 6'5". So if you can show that you can strike guys out and you're tall and you kind of hold your own everywhere else, Cato's going to be in on you. And I think that's why Cato likes Morgan Cooper more than most do.
Daniel asks in the chat, he said, Sam Fold is a big leaguer who successfully managed diabetes. Are there others? What does history suggest about Garrett Mitchell, California high school outfielder Garrett Mitchell, and his medical risks? Mitchell is diabetic. He's been handling it for a long time now. I want to say that he was diagnosed with the disease as a young child. And physically, he's in excellent shape. Other big leaguers who have managed diabetes, I can tell you off the top of my head, Michael Taylor, not Michael A. Taylor, the national center fielder, but Michael Taylor, the former Phillies and athletics prospect who was like sent around in trades. He was diabetic, and it's hard. I'm not sure how not managing your diabetes manifests itself in baseball players who are kind of like paid to maintain their bodies. So it's an interesting question, but I can tell you, Daniel, that like teams are concerned about it. We know that NFL, like Jay Cutler has been able to manage it in the NFL. And I feel like it's a different type of physical demand, but the NFL is more physically demanding and volatile than baseball is. Baseball is a grind. It's more of a mental grind, I think, for a lot of guys than it is a physical one. So I think it's okay, but teams are definitely kind of wary of Mitchell, and they don't like his bat, all of them either. To be honest with you, there's other stuff going on there too. That's probably why he's fallen. I really like him. I think it works. I know mechanically it doesn't look great, but he's done nothing but hit whenever I've seen him, including against elite competition on the showcase circuit last summer. So I'm a fan. Excuse me. BK Hipster Ball wants to know, it says the Rangers doubled down on toolsy bats. Cubs found a pair of college pitchers with power curves. Who made out better? If you asked me which of the two I would have rather had, even though I have like Cease ranked down in the 50s, probably the Rangers, the way the Rangers went about their business today is just like more of my personal preference. Hurtado says Johnny Carson in my reference to Jim Callis being the Johnny Carson of public sector prospect writers. He says, does that make Kylie McDaniel the Chevy Chase of prospect talent? I mean, I don't think the show that Kylie ran was as bad as the Chevy Chase show was, but he is that level of douche. No. No, I don't know. If I had to comp Kylie to a talk show host, it's not like he's not Letterman. I'm not sure. I'm not sure there's a fit there. Short-lived. Arsenio. Kylie's sights were set on a job with the team. So a lot of people. This job is just a bridge to that. And I think for Kylie, it just came sooner than even he thought it was going to, because he did such a great job. All right, so we're in the second round now. MLB Network broadcast is starting to rehash like the first round. Did anybody think any of the prospects was dressed particularly well? This is normally a thing I'm very interested in, and just haven't been. Let's take what time is it? It's 10:30 on the East Coast. Let's take some time and wrap things up here on the stream, and we'll talk about some of the best players that are left, the players that we liked, and then we'll call it an evening. What say you to that, Chris?
It sounds good to me.
Okay, so who are the guys that you think are the best players left on your board that you think we should see come off the board pretty early tomorrow or tonight yet?
Well, let's see. Let's go down the list, see who's left. Griffin Canning, still out there. Luke Heimlich, who's obviously going to fall a long ways. Who are some other guys? Connor Siebold is one who Cato likes, who was in the top 200 for Baseball America out of Cal State Fullerton. Trevor Stefan. Let's get some hitters. Mike Gretler of Oregon State. KJ Harrison of Oregon State. Drew Ellis, we talked about. Jimmy Haran of Duke. And JJ Schwartz, Florida. So those are some of Cato's guys. I know some of those guys maybe not even in contention to go in the next few rounds, but I think some of those guys like Ellis and Harrison, they're probably not too far off.
Some of the guys that are high on your list, on the Cato list, that I have seen would be Heimlich. Okay, obviously Heimlich's got other stuff impacting his stock. But I did like Heimlich as a prospect. He's the only college pitcher I've ever put present plus command on. 88-91, average curveball, average changeup. I think the changeup gets to above average. Brian Howard is a very tall TCU righty with middling stuff. Darren McCacken, it's pronounced McCacken. At Long Beach State is like 86-88 with really excellent breaking ball command. Certainly a guy who carves up college ball in a way that looks great on paper but doesn't excite scouts. Siebold is in a similar vein, but the stuff is a little bit better. You probably put like a 45 or 50 on the fastball at peak, and there's a chance that like one of the secondaries gets there, and he might command them enough that he pitches at the back of the rotation. Trevor Stefan is the guy who, as we traverse down the list, has the most stuff. Up to 96 in Fayetteville for me last week, pretty consistently 92 to 94. Average breaking ball. It's a sweepy, slide, like slurvy breaking ball. Plays up against right-handed hitters because he's got like a crossbody sort of funk to his delivery. And then as far as the hitters go, the top hitters are off the board, right? We've got KJ Harrison, who we've already talked about. Mike Gretler at Oregon State, who I was so shocked when he was on this list. I couldn't even tell you about him. I've seen him a bunch over the last couple of years, and I couldn't even tell you about him.
I also have him as a shortstop, and I think he may actually be a third baseman now. So that would probably
that's because Oregon State has Nicky, the Magic Man Madrigal.
Oh yeah, he's Cato's favorite college guy in general.
He's my favorite college guy in general.
He was an animal this year. He's a freshman.
And then some of the other Cato guys that we've talked about, some of these guys, Zach Lothar's a guy who you've seen personally and liked and is on my top 100. So yeah, there's some interesting guys. So then as far as the guys on my board that are left, let me pull up my spreadsheet. I'm sure picks are coming off the board now. I've closed my stream. We've got Sam Carlson, the right-hander from Burnsville, Minnesota. I'll show you guys my spreadsheet here. Not the board that's online, but just my spreadsheet. Because what the hell? This one. Sure. All right. So yeah, we've got Sam Carlton here, righty from Burnsville, Minnesota. As we go down Canning, obviously, the injuries is why he's fallen here. Tristan Beck, same thing. Peterson's off the board. Garrett Mitchell, we talked about the diabetes and just the bat-to-ball skills. And again, just the prep outfielders. I mean, look at where all these prep outfielders are. You got Bubba Thompson here. Helio Ramos here. Garrett Mitchell here. Like, all these guys are just like a shade. Quentin Holmes and Drew Waters here of each other. And so, the order they come off the board is it's going to be pretty volatile. We've seen Tristan Lutz already off the board. He's down at 61 overall for me down here. But there's not a huge gap between all these guys, even though it's like it looks like 40 spots on paper, and it is, but talent-wise, it's really not that big.
What do you know about Stuart Fairchild of Wake Forest? He just went to the Reds.
All right, Stu Fairchild, you can see, where is he? He's close to here. Okay, Stuart Fairchild had ranked 47 overall. He's like this compact little ball of muscle, and is very, very quick bat, very upright in his swing. I think there's more of a chance for swing and miss than some of the scouts I've talked to would tell you, because they look at how quick the bat is and they can't see him swinging and missing. I just think there might be play coverage issues. There's more power in there than someone who's like 6'1", 180 for sure. And he's a highlight reel defender in center field. So I think there's some questions about how he's going to hit with wood, what kind of power there's going to be, and just about the bat in general. I've got a future fringe grade on the hit tool, a future fringe grade on the game power. So his profile is going to rely pretty heavily on him playing good defensive center field. But I think he might do it. So, yeah, he's kind of interesting. I'm interested to see where the catchers, Luis Campusano Bracero and MJ Melendez, where the two of them come off the board. Melendez is like a defensive ace, might be an elite defensive catcher. Campusano has like bat speed that you don't see from catchers. So those are the guys that I'm most interested to see where they come off the board. Has anybody else made their pick since Fairchild went?
I haven't been watching. It doesn't look like it.
Okay. All right. So that's how things are. We think things are interested to watch shape out up here in the second round. I'm going to have written coverage on the site tomorrow, and my standard 9 a.m. Pacific time chat for tomorrow, it stands, and it'll probably I'm just going to continue through tomorrow's festivities. Maybe not through all of it, but through a large portion of it. And then day 3 is going to be me, like a lot of me tweeting, but you'll get written content every day. So, do you have anything you are writing that you want to plug, Chris?
Yeah, I'll be writing up all of the guys who went today with their Cato projections, and be doing the same for all the guys who go in day 2 and day 3. So the one up tomorrow will have probably brief descriptions about all the guys, saying why the projections say what they are, and then for 2 and 3, it'll probably just be a giant table of players with projections. So that'll be coming up soon.
Okay, cool. All right, well, for Chris Mitchell, I'm FanGraphs lead prospect analyst Eric Longenhagen. Thank you guys for joining us on our night 1 draft live stream. We hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, say so to Dave Cameron on Twitter, or David Appelman if you see him on the street where he lives. So thank you, and good night. I'm hitting the stop broadcast button.